like to call the August session of the Tellico Village Property Owners Association Board meeting open. With that, I'd like to introduce myself first. I'm Marty Inkrot. I'm president of the POA Board. I'd like to welcome everybody here in attendance and everybody that's also on watching the live stream. Just as a point of order, as we go through the meeting, we have discussion topics. We first go through the board, and then I'll open it up for any other comments. When you do have questions or comments, please come to the mic, introduce yourself, and we want everybody on the mic so that the people that are watching on the live stream can hear everything that's going on in the room. So with that, we'll get started. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the July meeting?
I make a motion to approve the July 19th, 2023 board meeting minutes as presented.
It's been moved and second to approve the minutes from the July board meeting. Do I have any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes as written, please raise your right hand.
I guess, yeah. What I was going to say is we need to take a look at the open minutes and how much we put in there, because all the presentation data is in there from the last meeting, which is online, and the minutes should be condensed to cover the topics, but not all the presentation slides.
Okay. So now, with that, does everybody agree with that? I'm assuming?
Well, I think we take the minutes that we've just approved as they are and move forward doing them the right way.
All right.
And I'm okay with it.
There you go.
Okay. So all in favor of approving the minutes as written, please raise your right hand. Do it again. 7-0. Passed. Next thing is the protective covenants. It says ratify, but we actually need to vote on them. Changes. Can I have a motion for that, please?
So I'll make a motion to approve the proposed First Amendment to the protective covenants of Tellico Village.
Have a second? Second. It's been moved and second to approve the amendments to the protective covenants. Any discussion?
Yes, I have some. I'd like Kevin to weigh in and kind of summarize what the changes are.
Sure, absolutely. This, this is the First Amendment to the Protective Covenants. And by way of background, the Protective Covenants are an exhibit to the Declaration for Tellico Village. And the Protective Covenants specifically govern land use. That is what you can and can't do on a particular lot and provide restrictions related to the use of the property. The POA attained the authority to amend the protective covenants based on the assignment of developer rights from CCI. So now the POA, by and through its board, have the authority to amend the protective covenants without any further action of the property owners or any further vote, whereas the declaration itself requires a 2/3 membership approval. So that's the distinction there. With respect to what's being amended, there are 3 new sections being added to the protective covenants, no changes to the existing language. But the 3 sections, and I'll start with the first. The first is to provide some more clarity regarding permit requirements for, in particular, rental properties, and that includes both short and long-term. There's no distinction in that regard. So what it does is establishes, first, it establishes that a permit is required for all rentals in Tellico Village. Second, it gives the POA the authority to charge a fee for that permit, which is a 1-year permit subject to annual renewal and payment of the annual fee. It gives the POA by and through the ACC with consent of the Board of Directors to establish specific rules and regulations governing rental properties, and probably most important, it provides a fining mechanism to allow for fines in the event of violations of particular rules. And that's really the most important thing here, is that previously under the protective covenants there was no fining mechanism authorized to the association. So this gives you some teeth and ability to enforce violations of rules going forward. The final component is it allows to collect In the event that there are fines issued relative to a particular property, it provides that those fines become a lien against the property itself. And then this section authorizes the POA to seek collection of those fines through the ordinary collection process for assessments, and also to recover any legal fees incurred in connection with assessments. So that's the first section, is really establishing a new rental permit requirement. The second section relates to violation of ACC Blue Book requirements. And really what this section provides is a fining mechanism in the event of any violations of Blue Book requirements, either for new construction or miscellaneous permit requirements, or home maintenance requirements, ongoing maintenance associated with a home or lot. And so what this gives is essentially it gives some teeth to the enforcement mechanism for the Blue Book, allowing fining after certain notice set forth within the Blue Book. And then again, collection of costs and fees as a lien against the property in the event of failure to remedy the fine situation. The third section is very similar to the second section, but it relates to the Red Book for commercial property. Again, it gives the association the authority to levy fines for violations of Red Book provisions, and again, a collection process. So those are the three new sections to the protective covenants, which this board has authority to approve and implement. Once formally approved, they'll be recorded with both Loudoun County and Monroe County Register of Deeds, and those protective covenants will run with the land and all properties in Tellico Village.
You may also want to mention that when a change is made to the restrictive covenants, they cannot be any less restrictive. They
Right.
must maintain the restrictiveness. You can add to them, but you can't subtract.
Correct.
Make a point, and it's just for the people watching and the people in the audience today. You did not do this, right? No, this comes, and you did not do this, correct?
I did not.
This comes from input from property owners through the ACC, through property owners to us and this board. Neither he nor he has a vote. All they do is make a recommendation. So this is
Or they do what we tell them.
Yeah, well, and so it's reversed, but there's a lot of people in this community that feel firmly, not yet, that feel firmly that you are telling us what to do, and that is not the case.
Yeah, I think that's a very important distinction to make, Pat, in that the ACC and the POA staff in particular are trying to address the majority of the issues they run into that are brought to their attention by property owners. So this is not something to be put in place to be onerous on property owners. It's something to put in place to make it easier or more effective for the ACC and the POA staff to address a lot of the issues that are being presented to them on a day-to-day basis.
And part two of that is that this is not 1, 2, 3, 10, 15, 20 people. This is something that is going on in this community, people doing things against the Blue Book, against the protective covenants, and saying later, I didn't know I had to have a permit. I didn't even call to get a permit. I did not know, or I knew and I did it anyway, and you now have no authority to tell me to remove it, because that's where we stand. We have no authority to do this, and that's what this does, is it gives this board and this ACC the authority to go to those people and say, yes, there is now a method to correct this action, or these things will happen, and this is what we're going to talk about later through the Blue Book. Correct?
Yes. So that's the other distinction I wanted to be sure everybody understood, is that the changes here provide the authority. The changes to the Blue Book identify the specific instances and fines.
Exactly. This is a blanket authority for the fining and collection and enforcement mechanism, and then ultimately the particulars of those rules will be within the Blue Book, which is approved and amended separately by the board.
Any other questions or comments?
Just one note procedurally, just for clarification. I know it says to ratify, and the reason is the board initially approved
No,
this.
actually, the board did not. The motion was to approve.
Yes.
The ratify is
It's,
incorrect.
it's incorrect. So is there any question or comments before we vote on it?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Gary Thomas. I live on Shawnee Point. I've been a homeowner in the Telco Village here for 19 years. And this is the first time I've ever been to one of these meetings. Kind of worked a lot and I just retired, so I don't even know what the Blue Book is. But this is very broad. I mean, it's like, I agree we should have something around new construction modifications, but I mean, like, if I do something in my house that doesn't involve the Blue Book, I mean, I could have a lien on my home. And the other thing is, I live on Shawnee Point. There's a Shawnee Point, Shawnee Drive, Shawnee Cove, Shawnee Lane, Shawnee Street, and I never get my mail half the time. So, I guess, how do you know if anyway, this is, and he said, you know, I guess the issue seems like two main things, people on new construction and modifications, but, I mean, this Blue Book seems, I don't even know, like I said, it seems pretty broad, and just something, I didn't do something that didn't meet the Blue Book, I get notified, I don't even know I got notified, and all of a sudden I have a lien on my home. Anyway, it just seems real broad, and you said the majority of the people want this. I mean, I don't know, did we have a vote as an organization, I mean, all of us to vote on this? So,
So, one point of clarification, and if you'd like to bring your question up, go ahead, and then I'll.
The part about the enforcement and what we're just talking about, the Blue Book and the Red Book.
We're not there
I've
yet.
been
We're not
battling.
there yet.
Oh, Dave Cropper from, I live in Kahiti. I've been battling, here's my case, right here, 2.5 years, I've been trying to get my home built by the builder. And a lot of the things I've asked the POA, I've been to ACC meetings, and I haven't gotten any satisfaction except for Mr. Pillsbury, and I met with him and my wife about 3 or 4 months ago, and we finally got a dead tree that's been in there. The builder bought the lot, the dead tree was there. So this is a Blue Book thing. I got many examples. If you, I know you don't have time now, but I appreciate your time. So I just want to know who's going to enforce this, because I tried to get things enforced. I talked to everybody. And, yeah, I don't see him here, but I've talked to a lot of people, okay? So who's going to enforce it? Who will? Who's got the background? Who knows about the Blue? I've read the Blue Book 4 times now, concluded it. Last 4th was the amendments. I know it, but the builders don't know it. A lot of builders use subs, and they don't know it. So who knows it? Have you guys read it? Which one of you guys have read the Blue Book, the totality?
I've read it.
Many times.
Okay.
Many
And- and
times.
you're-
Well, thank you, I
you're-
appreciate it, but you're not helping me enforce them, are you?
No, you're making the point here.
Okay, well, thank you.
So
I'll
when,
sit down
when,
now.
when this issue comes up to either the ACC or the board through appeal or whatever, I can ask, I can beg, I can pretty please, but they don't have to do check, because there's no enforcement policy.
Like TRDA, I was almost 2 years today. I met
You need
with
to
them.
be at the microphone.
Oh, I met with the TRDA 2 years ago for them on similar problems. Well, they said, well, we miss things. We're not perfect. So it's always on the builder. It's always on the builder. So where do I turn to? I have nothing to turn to, except for you guys, maybe. That's why I'm here now. Thank you.
Well, and that's the point I think Pat's making. That's what got us to this point. We're not, the proposal, so this was, we're actually jumping into the Blue Book now as opposed to the restrictive covenants, and that's the next topic. So if anybody has any questions or comments on the Blue Book, I'm going to ask you to refrain to those because that's the next topic. This is the protective covenants, which basically is saying it gives the POA the right to instill fines, right? It doesn't talk about any specific fining, doesn't speak of the process at all. That is all part of the Blue Book. And I would like to save that discussion then for the Blue Book discussion. If anybody's got questions or comments on these particular amendments to the protective covenants, that's the subject right now. Blue Book will be next.
Are we going to discuss the enforcement mechanism at some point?
That, or the Blue Book, that's correct, when we get to that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm Cherry Larson. I live over in Milwaukee, and we've been here for about a year. So, okay, sorry. Okay, so I got a couple of questions, and that is something that you just said on changing the, you were talking about changing the covenants and what all that covered, and I was trying to type as fast as I could. This is all new to me. So, you said that changes cannot be less restrictive going forward. So if we approve this today, or if you guys approve this today, going forward, you could never, let's say hypothetically, the majority of the residents or property owners here decided that this was too restrictive. Are you saying it can never go backwards? It can never, you can never come back and change that to be less restrictive?
The details would be in the blue book, right? All this is saying it gives the POA the right to fine.
But I'm
right?
saying,
The
okay.
authority.
The authority.
But, okay, so it's going to give you, and once again, I was trying to take notes very quickly. I don't know where we get copies of all this stuff y'all are supposed to be doing.
It's all
It's all
online.
online.
Well, I tried to go to that app, then your app no longer works.
Go to the webpage.
The app no longer works. I called the POA office. They said, we don't know. They actually told me, well, you know how it goes. You know, it just doesn't work right now. They told me that.
Well, go to the telecovillage.poa.org.
Website.
But if you're not accustomed to doing that, it's, you know, if you're not accustomed to this, and I can see your frustration on your face, sir, which, I mean, you know, no, I'm not sitting on the board.
So let me ask you a question. Do you have a computer?
Yes, I have a computer.
Then you can get to the POA website.
I can get to the POA website.
Yes, and
But
that's where
should-
it is.
No.
The website is most definitely there. The POA app has been down, which has been published in the Telegram a couple of weeks, letting people know that the app is being moved to a new platform. The POA website is live. The Blue Book amendments are on 2 different pages. It's on the ACC department page, right under the current Blue Book that says revised and suggested. It's also in 2 places on the Board of Directors website under direct.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Your mic's not
I'm on. I don't know.
Here-
Kevin,
here's-
can you turn me up?
Here is the, when I called them and asked them, okay, can you walk me through how to do this, how to get on your website and find this stuff? She was of no help to me.
Well, I greatly apologize. For the
So, I mean,
record,
and
call
I-
the Welcome Center. We will be more than happy
I
to
did,
walk you
I called the
through.
Welcome Center too. So, but anyway, getting back to this, what I am concerned about, other than the tools that we should have at our disposal are not functioning properly for such an important thing during this time. But, okay, so the sections are, and I think this is something we all need to be concerned about, is that we will not be able to change that going forward to where we can make their ability less restrictive. Should we have a vote for all the property owners? For all the property owners to come forward and say, okay, we agree with these changes? I mean, why can't we do something like that instead of giving the board carte blanche to make all of these changes? That's one of the questions that I have. And then, so where do we go to find the governing rules? You guys have explained that. And then, how are the notices to these people going to be delivered? So, hypothetically, if I paint my front door pink, how are you going to deliver that notice to me?
If you will wait till we get to the Blue Book, I will be happy to discuss that in
But
detail.
I don't think we need to get to the Blue Book. I think we need to address the first concern going forward of changing these covenants. I mean,
But your question was about the Blue Book. Now, if you want to talk about the other stuff, then we're good.
You're right. You've got me there.
So here's basically our
We don't want to
option.
live in a Del Webb community, Mr. Pillsbury. We don't. If we
So-
did, that's where we would have moved.
I have no argument with you.
You know,
That's not my point. I just
We
want to
didn't
say,
want to
let's
live in a
answer the
place that's
question.
that restrictive.
Ma'am, let me just correct one thing. The protective covenants can be amended at any time, and they can be repealed. That's a difference. We were talking about the restrictive covenants versus the protective covenants, and I think that was where some confusion was
Okay.
like. The protective covenants, which we are addressing here right now, can be amended by the Board of Directors, and they can be changed in the future by the Board of Directors. So there's nothing that would say that whatever is decided on the protective covenants cannot be modified, amended, or anything else in the future.
Then I misunderstood you?
I was referring to the declaration, and that's why there's a distinction between the two.
And I think the important point is that we do have options. We can decide not to do this, right? We can say, look, we don't want to have any type of fining mechanism. We can just leave things as status quo. And then basically it stays like it is today, where all the complaints that not the board gets so much, but the ACC and the POA staff, all the complaints that they get, it's going to be, well, we'll send them a letter, just like they've always done, with no other teeth to get people to do stuff. It can stay that way. It can.
Yeah.
So that's the options that we're dealing with.
And I'm not saying it should stay that way. Believe me, you should see what we live across the street from. I'm not saying it should stay that way, but I'm also saying that we don't need to give you guys carte blanche, and that to me is what you are asking for, in my opinion.
So I don't know that I view it as carte blanche. I believe that, the board is here. We are representative government, right? If you want to call it a government, but basically it's representative, and the board is the representative of the property owners. We're all property owners too. So as we go through these types of deliberations, we do our best to do what the majority of property owners want. Now, and that's when feedback is really good. So we have something like this, and it's either we do something different or we stay the way it's been. And the proposal is to do something different to help satisfy the majority of the complaints that we're getting from maybe not necessarily people sitting here, but property owners. Because there is no teeth in what we have today in our restrictive covenants and Blue Book.
Use the example that I'm off again. Use the example that the lady just gave. Am I? And I appreciate the example that you gave as an example, and I don't know the situation, but you said across the street. So we go over there, and if it's a contractor's house, then we review with the contractor, and if they have an owner, then it would, by definition, be reviewed with the owner. The letter would be sent, and sometimes it's a certified letter. You tell them you have X number of days to mow the lawn, clean it up, whatever, and then that contractor or that homeowner then says, no, I don't want to. And right now, it says for the POA, again, property owners, because this is what we have invested in our home equity as well, we are going to go over there and cut their lawn and send them a bill. It says we can do that. And then they say, I'm not paying the bill. There's nothing else we can do. Nothing. I am, and have said this for the 6 years I've been on this board, I'm adamantly against any rules on an ACC or a Blue Book. I moved from a place in Maryland that was transferring from a developer to an HOA/POA, and you would not believe the rules that they were going to be putting in. I had 3 kids in school. I have a 3-car garage, and they said you needed to have all of your cars parked in the garage, and anything out is $50 a day. A day. I had nowhere else to park my son's car going to school. Now, we didn't move because of that. I just happened to leave when that was happening. I moved here in 2007 and have not had a great number of incidents until the last couple of years. And people are now coming in and wanting to put walls on the property line between 2 houses because they can't get along with neighbors. You can't tell me I can't put that wall in. There's nothing in the Blue Book that says I can't. And if you tell me I can't, I'm not taking it out because you can't make me take it out. I can put anything on my yard I want. That's what they're telling us. Now, the issue that you talked about across the street, you can't, as a POA or an ACC, get that corrected because you have no teeth to get it corrected. And when we get in the Blue Book, we're going to be discussing that. But right now, we don't even have the teeth to through these protective covenants, to even change that. And so you're going to come up, or somebody in this community, and the way it's been going lately, is there's going to be a lot of people in the community who are going to come to this POA board saying, help me, help me, help me. I can't, or I won't, or I can't live with that situation, yours, and I can't tolerate this anymore, and you're not representing me. And what this does is that gives us the authority to make a change that we can protect the greatest majority of property owners. Not one or two, not three, but the greatest majority. And that's why we're asking to do this. Now, let's get into this. This happens all the time, and let me explain. I've explained this before, but when you have a representative form of government, is which we are set up as a board, and we're taking applications for board members, so please go get one and run. Take my place, take his, because then you can be a part of this representative government. But at that same time, ask yourself the question, when was the last time you voted on a Loudoun County school spending bill? When was the last time you voted on a federal defense spending bill? When was the last time you voted on pay increases for Lenore City or Loudoun County or fire department or anything like that that changes? That's the representative form of government, and if you don't like it, you would think I'm going to say something else, but I'm not. That's where you need to get together and come up and say, we want the covenants and restrictions changed. But at the same time, remember that only about 24% of you vote. So you're going to have 24 or less % of the property owners, and this is real. Check me out. Prove me a liar. Go back and prove to me. You're going to have 24% of the property owners tell you what you're going to do if you vote for it. Yes, ma'am, you are. Okay, I'm done. Tirade's over.
All right.
I'm Terry Welks, property owner. My question is, you said the majority of people have told you that they want to agree with these protective covenant amendments, which includes a lien on your property?
No. Back to the microphone. No. What I'm saying, and maybe I didn't say it properly,
You said more than 10.
okay, but from the number of complaints that we're receiving through the ACC, through HelpSpot, to the POA board directly, there are a lot more people every day making significant changes against what already exists in the Blue Book that we can do nothing about. And she is the living example saying you should see what's across the street. You see them in Nextdoor and Facebook all the time. You can go ask. You can say, pretty please. You can say, I'm begging you. But they legally have the right to say, you can't do anything. Why should I change?
Well, to me, it makes more sense for the builders and the renters, but I don't know about the whole public, and how many people really agree with that?
Have no idea. I'm looking at the number of complaints. We start every board meeting now an hour.
That's my point. You have
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah, we start every board.
Couldn't a petition be put out, or a questionnaire of what they would want, the majority of the people?
Well,
Before something like this is voted on?
looking at the outcry on Facebook and Nextdoor, and I'm just one guy sitting here, one property owner, it would just thrill me to death, quite honestly. And I'm a type A personality, so it would thrill me to death to do nothing with this, and everybody watching this and every property owner start tracking these things. Not turning people in, but start looking at, I made a complaint to the POA and they couldn't do anything about it. I went down and did something in my yard, and an inspector, which we have on staff, we're not adding, goes down and looks and says, oh, by the way, did you get a permit for that? No, I didn't. Well, then they go to the ACC and we send them a letter and they say, I'm not going to take it out. You can't make me take it out. So that's what we're basing it on, and it's getting more and more all the time.
Just a lien seems pretty excessive.
Oh, absolutely it is. And you would never put a lien on my house before I either corrected the problem or paid the fine.
Okay, that's all I have.
And you
Okay.
don't just automatically get a lien. I mean, that's the end of the process. So
So maybe it's time to discuss the process before we,
Could I just make a comment?
please.
go ahead.
So Doug Sloan, I live in Doyle Lane in Chattooga Coves. Moved here 6 weeks ago, but I've been watching you guys for the last couple of years as a property owner from afar. Just want to commend the work that you guys do. Obviously not easy. I'd just like to provide a contrary opinion perhaps, and I think it gets a little confusing between protective covenants and restrictive covenants. But in my view, there's no point of having any rules if you don't have any type of enforcement. I mean, you may as well throw the blue book or the red book away if you can't enforce the rules. So I'm not talking about the rules specifically. I know you're going to get into that, and that's going to be interesting, I'm sure. But really, to me, to my mind, all this is giving the POA the ability to enforce the rules that either exist or whatever they are in the future. So to my mind, I applaud you guys for taking this one on. I do want to introduce a second question, though, sort of related, if I might. You don't have to address it today, but that's related, I think, to what's called the restrictive covenants. So I think this is great that we're going to be able to enforce whatever rules are in place. But to me, there's a bigger issue, and that's what Chet raised, I think, a few months ago, which was the percentage of rentals in Telco. And I listened with a lot of interest at the last board meeting to the discussion that occurred there, and understand that that's a really difficult process to go through. But in my mind, I'm trying to imagine just moving here and what a great community this is. I think you said there's like 6,000 plotted lots, something like that. Imagine 20% of those are rentals. That's 1,300 rentals. Imagine if it's 30%. That's probably 2,000 rentals out there. Think of the problems that will exist then. Not trying to disparage anyone who rents properties, but when you have that type of number, you're going to have issues, and talk about enforcement problems. In my mind, that would destroy the type of community that Telco has built here over the years. And I think it's the board's responsibility to address this question. Now, I heard the comments, I think it was, Pat was quite vocal, rightly so, about we need a groundswell of support, or a groundswell of property owners to really bring this up. But I question, you know, there are other situations, take this example we've been talking about, you know, issues getting things corrected, enforced. Was that a groundswell? Maybe you could consider, I don't know what the definition of that is, but I think the board listened to those concerns, took action. This is the action we're going through now, which is exactly the way it should work, I think, as a board that represents the community. So I want to read one thing here, if I may. So to enhance and preserve the Telco Village quality of life resulting in a lifetime of well-being. In my understanding, that's the board's mission statement. And I think by punting on the topic of number of rentals in the community, you guys aren't living up to that mission statement. And my ask would be simply to ask, charge Chet and his team with coming up with a strategy, an approach, the funding. We can put $6.5 million into water pressure, but we can't put whatever it is, a couple $100,000 into addressing what could be a strategic issue that could destroy this community. So I'd appreciate if you guys would think about that again. Thanks.
So before we move on, one of the things that the board has been talking about is, well, how do we address the short-term rental plan? And what we feel like we need to do is put together an ad hoc committee, and Bob Brunetti has volunteered to be the board rep on that, but then get other property owners involved too, to put together a strategy, a plan for how we should address this. Because as we pointed out in prior meetings, to make a change in our governing documents, to put in language to restrict the number of rental properties, people here, several people have already mentioned, put it out to a vote of the property owners. Well, we would have to, because that's the only way that we can change our governing documents. That becomes a pretty expensive proposition. I'm not saying we don't want to do it, but because we have to get notarized signatures of,
Over 4,000 people. that
what's
say
the
yes.
percentage? What's the
66%.
66% of all property owners to be able to make that change to our governing documents. So that's not to say we shouldn't do it, but it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. So that's why we said as a board, well, let's put this ad hoc committee together and get some people that are passionate about this to come up with a strategy and a plan for how we can address it.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Susan Gingrich. Can you hear me okay? I'm short, so I don't know.
You can adjust that. Grab that, there, squeeze that, and push, pull it down. There you go.
All right.
No worries. Just hold on to it, just hold it.
Okay. With all due respect to all of you, this is the only board meeting that we have a chance to provide any input. And it would be nice if you would listen to us more than you talk. As far as the issue right now, I am a recovering bureaucrat, so I know bureaucracy really well. And I have concerns about what you're trying to do, but I don't think, it doesn't matter what any of us say, you're going to vote on it and you're going to pass it today.
I disagree.
Pat, we don't have to agree.
I know
Okay.
that.
All right.
So the only other thing I want to add to your comment is, that's exactly why Chet's having the town halls. And the board members attend that as well. I think that the communication mechanisms are so much better now than what they have been in the past. He had a town hall specifically for this topic.
Yes,
right?
I was here.
Okay.
And I spoke.
So just to be sure everybody understood that.
That's fine, but you're volunteers, but you're also politicians.
I disagree with that.
Yeah, I totally disagree with that.
That's okay, you don't have to agree with me. People vote for you, so you're politicians.
But you called me a dirty name.
Well, when I ran for county commission, I hated every day that I was a politician, okay? Do you remember when, this was a couple of months ago, when I asked to put incorporation on the agenda for the board meeting?
Did you ask me?
Well, you're the one that I dealt with.
Did you ask, I'm just asking, did you ask me that specifically? I don't remember that, that's why I didn't put it on the agenda.
You remember referring my request to be on the agenda? Right. So I didn't hear anything, so then I got in touch with you. And you set up a meeting with Chet and with Steve. Okay? And we had a nice hour meeting and we talked and everything else. And we talked about a lot of things, including the fact that I mentioned that I didn't think that the people that have lived here longer were being considered. That's a side thing. Anyway, as far as the incorporation part, what you all suggested was that I do some research and get back to you. Now, apparently, our attorney and the lobbyist already gave an opinion on incorporation, and I don't agree with their opinion. But I think all of this that's going on now, if we're going to have this kind of stuff, we might as well be incorporated and not be penalized for not being incorporated.
So the whole corporation issue is obviously a separate issue, that's right. And-
Absolutely, but I still have a problem with these because the people have not had an opportunity to give you sufficient feedback. Yes? Well, I mean, you read next door, obviously. So you see that we have good people in this village that are very knowledgeable. They call us FIPS, formerly important people. That's what villagers are known as. There's people with all sorts of expertise, and there's people that have expertise that y'all don't have. And you really should listen to other people.
So you're saying that I do not?
Okay, this is my last statement, because I don't want to argue with anybody. You've got business to do.
You made it very
I think that you could use a few more women on the board, because women care about people too, not just money and dollars. I want to leave here. I've been trying to leave for 2 years.
Okay, we have to keep this moving. Thanks for your comments. We would like to have more women on the board too, but we can't control that. That's controlled by all the property owners. So,
David Adkins and I live at 112 Houston Alleyway, and I have a very simple question. If a property owner feels that some of the restrictions are silly and need to be removed, what is the mechanism by which that can happen? Is there a mechanism that a property owner can get together with other property owners, if this is representative government, and put it on a ballot of some sort and say, okay, I think that not allowing a car in your driveway is rather silly. I think we need to remove this. Is there a mechanism for doing that?
It's called the ACC. It stays on. So yes, there is a mechanism, and it's called the ACC, which are a group of volunteer property owners, volunteer their time to do new construction, miscellaneous permits, questions and answers, et cetera. And you can get on that agenda and to your heart's desire, make any type of comments or suggestions that you would like.
But that is not putting it in front of all the homeowners. It has to go through a committee. Is there not a mechanism where all the homeowners can get together and say, we don't like this restriction. We think it should be okay to have a car in your driveway, and it doesn't have to go through a committee. It can be put on a ballot somehow, and we can vote on it.
There is no ballot. It's
Why?
a representative form of government.
Even in a representative form of government, there are mechanisms, for instance, a constitutional amendment to the Constitution by which voters can get together and put an item on the ballot.
Right, but who votes for that? The state legislature votes for constitutional amendments.
No, they don't. If you look at, for instance, there are a number of states, I think it's Ohio, that just is going to put abortion or right to life on the menu.
We're getting way off the point here.
Look, I'm not talking.
I want to answer your question.
Yes.
The answer to that question is if the homeowners and property owners of Tellico Village want to change the rules,
Yes.
you have to amend the covenants and restrictions.
How do you do it?
2/3 vote of the entire community.
Okay. And you mentioned
And
how.
that, by the way, includes people that don't live here that own property.
Yeah, that's great.
yeah, it's a challenge. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a challenge.
So, look, supposedly the POA is supposed to be acting in the interest of the homeowners. You just said that earlier.
No, not in the interest of the homeowners. The POA board has to act in the interest of every property owner, whether they live here or not.
Per the declaration.
Okay, and one other point. You mentioned how difficult it is to take a vote of everyone about how expensive it is. Why can't you just say, get their email address and you have them on the computer?
Because it's got to be
Notarized?
notarized vote.
Per the declaration
Per
that
the
everyone
declaration.
agreed to when they bought a piece of property here.
Yeah.
Maybe that has to be changed.
Then you
Well,
have to,
maybe it should, but that's how you change it. Wherever you came from, you had deed restrictions, correct?
Yes.
The covenants and restrictions of Tellico Village substitutes for deed restrictions. You don't have individual deed restrictions in your individual deed here. You have the covenants and restrictions. And to change them requires a 2/3 notarized vote of every property owner.
And perhaps that needs to be changed.
Well, but I just told you how it gets changed.
So you need 4,500 votes, yes votes, to change that.
You need 4,500 votes.
That's 2/3 of the 6,800 property owners.
So we do not live in a democracy. You need a supermajority to get
No,
it changed.
that's the way the covenants are.
So the covenants were developed in 1985 when the village was founded by the developer. We've changed one thing in the covenants in all of the years since, and how long did it take to do it? 2 years.
That shows how difficult
And how
it
much
is.
did it cost?
And that shows how difficult it is.
Yeah.
Well, of course it is.
But that's what that's what we all have to deal
frankly,
with.
but those are the rules that we've been handed that we have to deal with.
Well, I guess we'll have to work real hard to change the rules so that we have more power. Yeah. Okay, good. We'll work on it.
Okay. Hey, one thing, I agree we need some more teeth. I mean, I totally agree with that. Someone made the comment back here, said that, a lien is a little excessive, and I think, Marty, you said that's the end of the process. So I just want to make sure it's clear, because I read this in the connection, that at 60 days, a lien will be put on your property. So, I mean, I think that's kind of excessive. And I get worried about, I put my pink door up, and I'm out of town for a couple of months, and my mail doesn't even go to me all the time anyways. I live on Shawnee Point, Shawnee Place, Shawnee Cove. People all the time ask where all these different Shawnees are. So how, I mean, all of a sudden I got a lien, I'm in Florida, fishing out in the Keys, and then all of a sudden my attorney says you got a lien on your property. Holy mackerel. So I think you need teeth, but I agree with the gentleman back there that this is kind of excessive, 90 days of lien on your property.
So can I address that, if I may?
Actually, you're getting into the blue book again.
I know. We're getting into the blue book, so we need to
We'll
finish
discuss-
this
That's
discussion,
okay.
and then
Go
we'll
ahead.
get there.
Go ahead.
I might as well go
Bring the
ahead.
topic.
So
Go
here's
ahead.
the thing. First of all, there is a process. Nobody's house gets a lien put on it until we have contacted that homeowner. So if it
Well,
takes...
how do you contact me?
Pick a choice. Phone, we have to send them, and if we start out with a letter, right?
The
and if
letter
that
goes to
letter
my
doesn't come
neighbors
back-
that I never get.
It's
Is it certified? That's what,
Yeah, you have to sign for
or
it.
is that what it's going to be? Is that the process?
Yes. Oh,
It's going to be
yeah.
a certified letter.
Always, anytime, and I need to say this clearly, anytime the POA asks you for money, it has to be certified. That's not my choice, that's the rules.
Okay, well,
That's current.
And so that's the current, that's today,
Yeah.
there's no change in that. Whoa.
Okay.
And so, but the thing I want to be clear about is, there is practicality behind this. If you're in Europe and there's a problem with your house, the first thing we're going to do is try and contact you. And if we send out a certified letter and it comes back undelivered, not refused, but undelivered, then we're going to go to Plan B. And most of the time, we've already hit Plan B. We send out an email. Hey, by the way, we sent you a certified letter and we haven't heard anything. So theoretically, if you're in Europe and you have a phone, you're going to get that email.
I don't use
And
it.
if you don't,
I don't. I won't. I don't check.
so if you don't, then everything gets on hold until we can contact a live person.
Okay.
And we've gone to the point already to knocking on your door going, hey, we're sending stuff to you. Are you getting it?
Well, I mean,
And-
I
and
don't
so-
expect that to happen, but I don't know the blue book, and I
But
don't
I
know.
mean, the thing
It
is,
seems
we don't
pretty
want-
broad, things that you could get.
Sure, so let's be
Fine
clear
for it.
about one thing. First of all, this is not a money-making proposition for the association. This will be a pain in my and my staff's life. So, but the reality of it is, it's there to change behavior. It's not there to make money. And if everybody realizes, all we're asking is, I don't care if the fines were $1,000 a day. If I'm not doing something wrong or I'm communicating with the board, I don't care, because I'm never going to pay that. I'm never going to have that problem. I'm never going to have a lien on my house.
Hey, I've got an
because I'm
idea.
just playing by the rules.
I got
And
an
we're
idea.
always going to give you the opportunity and the benefit of the doubt to get it done. We are still having to think of the human beings that live here. We are still, and I would challenge the fact that even in my own staff, they understand that my first concern are the homeowners. That's my first concern. And so when we put these rules in here, it's to help all the homeowners who are living next to a house that looks terrible, or they're painted a pink door, as you put it, which I love that example. And all of those things, that's what it's all about, is to improve the living conditions that we have, not to be punitive, even though it is punitive. How are you going to change people's behavior if you don't get their attention? Because so far, it's not working.
This is
And-
going
and I-
to
and I
impact, this is going to impact like less than 5% of property owners. The bottom line is, like I said earlier, we can do nothing. We can just let it go the way it is today. And the only reason this is even put in here is to try to give the POA some type of leverage to address problems. This is not to just be randomly punitive because you happen to be out of the country and right before you left, you painted your door pink.
Yeah, and that's my concern. I mean, I understand what we were trying to do here, and I don't totally understand all the steps and why, like a lien in 90 days. I mean, there's a lot of things we could do. I mean, I think different steps to get paid. I know it's not a money-making thing, but there are other things we could do than the way it's spelled out.
So back to the protective covenants. Nothing else is on the table right now except for the protective covenants to give the POA the authority, right, to do something.
Right.
To implement fines. That's it. We haven't talked about anything beyond that. You know, a lot of this discussion we've been having here is really for the Blue Book when we talk about specific incidents, fine amounts, things like that.
So the Blue Book says after 90 days there's a lien placed?
We haven't got there yet.
Okay, well, it was in the connection that this was,
Well, look at our agenda. We're talking about protective covenants right now.
I know, and that's what this was saying, that, so
That's step 2.
step 2 is the fines and the
step
process.
Step 2.
Because Marty said the lien was at the end of the process, where this said it was 90 days, the lien's placed on your property.
I need to remind
270
people.
days, your property's foreclosed.
Hang on, Beth has a
Can
comment.
I have a comment? The article in the connection, we do not own the connection, nor did we write the said article. It was misstated, and there is a lot of confusion, so do not use that article as your truth. It speaks about the Blue Book, but it called it the restrictions. They're two different things. That's what happens in news, unfortunately.
Comment.
So the article is misleading.
Okay, again, I'm just concerned, I have the pink door, I'm out of town, and I don't get my email notified, and I got a lien on my property.
I have a suggestion. Those of you who've got their declaration, which everybody signed or have copies of when you bought your property, go to Article 12. Article 12 talks about exterior maintenance. Basically, it says if the owner fails to maintain, the POA has the right but is not obligated to come in and fix it. But if they do, they'll send you a bill. It also says assessment of costs, Section 2. The assessment of costs says if the property owner doesn't pay it, guess what happens next? There's a lien. So forget about what we just approved here that gives the POA the ability to put teeth into fining. You've already agreed to have liens on your property if you don't maintain it. You may not have realized that, but when you bought your property, you agreed to have liens put on your property if you don't maintain it.
Then why haven't we done that? If
We
it's
don't
all-
have any teeth. All we
Wait,
can
wait.
do is we can send people in to cut your grass, which we do, or fix roofs, which we have in critical situations. But think about it.
Well, you just said you could file a lien if I don't maintain my house right now.
If we go in and spend money on your property,
That's an if.
that's an if. We don't have to.
Well, when you cut the grass, you spent money, you could put a lien on
If
that.
we go in and cut your grass, we'll bill you. If you don't pay it, you get a lien.
Well, why haven't we done that? Because
We have.
We have. That's not what this is discussing.
All right, well,
And
anyway,
it
it's a little confusing, I guess.
Well, it shouldn't be confusing. You've already agreed to allow liens on your property.
Okay.
But if you did not read the covenants and restrictions governing articles and/or Blue Book, you're at a loss. I apologize for that. But I can't educate you on all of that today. We don't have enough
No,
hours.
I'm not asking you that.
But here's the point I want to make, and you can take it, because I'm just going to say things. Sometimes I say things as a knucklehead. If there is that much objection, see, he agrees, if there's that much objection to this, of the POA having the authority to go in with teeth and correct the issue of a house across the street, down the street, or the drainage, they've altered their drainage plan and it's running across into your yard. If you're so adamantly in favor of us not having that authority, then I suggest we just table this, let it go, and listen to the complaints, because we can't do jack about it. And the second letter is pretty please.
Hi, I'm Debbie Halisack.
Hi, Debbie.
Hi. What we're trying to get around to is voting on the protective covenants, correct? That is to give the board, or the ACC, as a committee of the board, the opportunity, or not the opportunity, but the ability to change the Blue Book so that there's teeth to allow ACC or the board to fine people if they violate it. Right now, all you can do is send them a please letter. But if this gets passed, then you would have the ability to put in the Blue Book, which is up for discussion later, how many dollars you want to put towards a fine or whatever. That's still all up for discussion. Whether they can take your house for not mowing your lawn, that's still up for discussion in the Blue Book. This is only giving you the ability to make some teeth so that you can enforce the Blue Book. Am I correct? I'm not part of this committee, but can I ask for you to take a vote, please? Thank you.
Marty, I call the question.
With that, yes, let's call for a vote. All in favor of a...
We need a motion in a second.
I thought we already
I
had
made
it.
the motion.
That's what started
And Bob
this.
seconded it.
That's what
It's been
started-
a while.
That's what started the
I
whole
think I did.
discussion. We're following Robert's Rule of Orders. So with that, I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor of the amendments to the protective covenants as written, please raise your right hand. 7-0. So again, that gives the POA and the board the authority to do it, but that still needs to be defined in terms of what exactly they can do. And that is the Blue Book discussion. So with that, I want Chet to
So
open up the Blue Book
I
discussion.
would like to make a couple suggestions here. One of them is that we put on hold for further review the Blue Book changes, and I'm not so much talking about the kinds of things we want to address, but rather the charges, the fines, and how that process goes, and review those to a certain extent, whether it's the dollar figure or how we do this. Ultimately, I need everyone to understand that there may be, I'll go out on a limb, there may be 5 people in the entire community that we've ever had to talk to or go to a lien on, ever. And that's out of almost, what do we say, 68 homes, or, well, there's 5,400 homes built right now, okay? So we are talking about almost nobody. I mean, just a very finite number. The point of having that there is so that everybody understands. For those people who are living with a next-door neighbor who refuses to do anything, and currently there are people in this community who not only refuse, but know that we can't do anything about it, and they continue. And so it's not just that they don't know or they don't understand, they are deliberately going, go pound sand, I'll do whatever I want. And they've moved into a community that has restrictive covenants, but yet that's their opinion. So this is the final, last blow to put a lien on somebody's house, because it means they've basically told everybody, including all of their neighbors, I'll do what I please. I don't care what your rules are. So the lien is not the bottom line, ever. And I need to emphasize this, and by the way, the board and myself are going to be the people who define who gets a lien put on their house based on the rules. It's not going to be arbitrary, and it's not going to be at 90 days, the clock's ticking, let's throw a lien on them. It is always and ever will be a last resort, the final step, when somebody has refused to do anything. So I need to make that clear, regardless of what we come back with. But my suggestion to the board is that we review the Blue Book further and refine some of the cost and refine some of the process to be sure that everyone is treated equally and fairly.
And I'm going to further suggest, I know I haven't mentioned this to you, Chet, but I think this deserves another town hall, because it sounds like there are a lot of people with opinions. So once Chet and the ACC have a chance to re-review this the way they like it, get that published to everybody, have another town hall, because that's really the forum for that, as opposed to these meetings. And plus, it gives everybody an opportunity to share their questions and concerns. And my only last plea to all of you is that please take into consideration that this board is just trying to do what's best for the community. There is no such thing as a power grab by this board. It doesn't benefit us.
Oh, surely you're wrong.
We're property owners too. You know, we may have got into more than what we bargained for by being on this board in some of these cases, it seems like. But we truly are trying to be as representative of the whole community as we can. So it bothers me a little bit when people come in here and they're kind of in attack mode against the board, and I'm not saying you may not feel like you're justified in doing so, but in the end, that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to keep this a place where people want to live, where people want to come to and be the best community of its kind in the country. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to have power. We're not trying to charge people excessively for things. So please keep that in mind when you come to these meetings.
Hey, Fred.
And to all the town halls and everything. Pat.
Keep in mind, everybody, he's only got a few months left.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep my head down and work hard those last few months. I will never be known as having short-time disease. So, tagging on to what Marty said, my communications with property owners that have reached out, and I am, again, some people have referred to it, a reader, and I refer myself as a connoisseur of Nextdoor because it gives you the negative impression as well as the positive. So I get to look at both sides. But the personal conversations, the people that have reached out that I've gone to visit and had one yesterday, two wonderful people, their issue was, and my issue is, kind of what you talked about here and what we've discussed in before. This is not a punitive fining system. This is a corrective. It shows that step one, whether it's $5 or $100, step one, you took a step. Step two, you took another step, and three. So it's like working at a union, progressive discipline. If you don't show the progress of trying to catch, Bob being a judge, he'll understand this more than anybody. If you just go out there and put a lien on them, you're going to not probably get that lien because you didn't notify them. And my concern with this and why I agree with going back and looking at it again is that we need to go back and look at these dollar amounts. It's not an issue of being punitive, but I think some of them can, and in my case, appear to be. And we need to fix that. That's my objection, and representing the property owners that reached out to me. And I agree, we need to go back and look at it, and I agree, a town hall explaining why, who, and everything else is appropriate.
Okay, with that,
I got one comment. I would suggest all property owners go look at the revised proposed Blue Book, because it's just not about the table of fines. There's a whole new section, talks about rental permits, what's required to rent your house, what are the requirements for receiving a permit to rent. So I know a lot of attention's been focused on those tables with the big numbers. I suggest you go look at the other guts. There's some new wordage in here for spas, hot tubs, rental permits. So you need to review the total proposed revised Blue Book, and then when we get back to it, I agree, we need to take a look at all the fines and lay out the process.
Okay, in the interest of time, I want to keep moving, so we're going to move on to the next agenda topic.
Really quick, there's a lot of questions online. Kevin Stevens, can you just run through the documents that require votes and the ones that don't? So like the bylaws the board can do, and just run through real quick.
A lot of governing documents, and we talk about them kind of interchangeably, but the declaration itself requires a 2/3 vote, notarized signatures of the property owners. That is the declaration, the original founding document of Tellico Village, drafted by CCI in 1985. The bylaws are the operational documents for the board. How does the board administer? Who's officers? What can officers do? Who's directors? What are their role? How many meetings do you have to have? The operational bylaws for the board of the association can be amended by the board itself. The protective covenants, which we've just talked about, which are an exhibit to the declaration, govern certain land use issues, and we've just been talking about that. The protective covenants, now that the association is the developer, can be amended by the association by and through its board of directors. The Blue Book, which is just a residential construction handbook and home maintenance handbook, which has particular rules related to new construction permits, miscellaneous permits, and home and lot maintenance. That is amended by first approval of the ACC, which is the committee to review permits and properties, and then second, once it's approved by the ACC, ultimately to the board of directors for approval. So those are kind of the subset of governing documents and what's
Red Book.
required for approval.
Red
And the
Book.
Red Book is the same. Again, Red Book only governs commercial property, so that's rarely used in this instance, but that's approved by the ACC and subsequently the board.
And all of those documents are on the website, TelicoVillage.POA.org.
Okay. Dave Cropper again. What you just said is perfectly correct, but I would like, and this is the problems I've had, is that I'm a former board member of HOA, so I can appreciate what you guys are going through. And it's not easy. But we have, my opinion is the document for the Blue Book contains too much information on the builders and on the homeowners, our stakeholders. We're the stakeholders. I think that should be, if we're going to do this, let's do it right. Separate the two. We got home builders and we got stakeholders, the owners. Those, I think it's just too confusing because everybody I ask about the subs people, the people working on my house and other houses, I don't know what the Blue Book is. And what I would suggest is you do that, and then you have every person where that's a sub or a contractor sign the document that I have read, I understand it, and I will abide by those rules. And that would solve so many problems that I know not only I, but a lot of other homeowners I've talked to in the last 2.5 years have had with builders. And what the problem is, if you're looking at long-term things for here, your homes and everything, there's going to be a lot of homes in 5 or 10 years that's going to be suffering some major problems.
Sure.
I mean, for building. So then that detracts from the property, and that's against the missions you have.
So-
that's what I have to say. So,
To be direct, that's one of the things that we're going to address is separating those
okay, thank you.
so that they're in two different sections.
Good.
But even if you do that, ultimately, it's the property owner that's responsible for anything the builder does.
That's absolutely
Period.
correct. So what I was about to say is what you suggested is absolutely the best thing, but it would have to come from the homeowners going to their builder and saying, here's the Blue Book, buddy. If you step outside of this, it's going to be out of my control, except that I'm going to want you to pay for all these issues. Because, as an example, builder's building. He's doing his block work and he's got a big pile of sand, and that sand washes out in the street. And we send our code guys over and tell them they've got to move it out of the street. And they say, well, we'll get to it. And so they don't get to it. And we pull their permit. So they've now got to pay another $1,200 to get their permit back to build. In doing so, they've now cost that homeowner money. Well, the homeowner should be willing to get them to sign off on that and say, you do that kind of screw up, it's on you, I'm not paying it. And that's the benefit of having these separate, so you can understand that and see that.
Yes.
And be able to address that.
To build in
I
our,
had nobody to go to when I had these problems. I had, the ACC went to that meeting, well, they said they were going to do things when the house next to us was built. Well, that never happened. So I just want to enforce it. Who's going to enforce it?
Sure, no, I got it.
that's what we're trying to do.
Everything else you're doing, I agree, you need to have teeth. Like, you need to have teeth in what you're doing. And I agree with what you've done, so.
All right. Thank you. We do need to move on. So let's move on with the CEO report. Well, the only reason I didn't is because we said we were going to go back and he was going to go back and look at it again and then have a town hall. Okay, is that okay? That's why I just blew by it, the rest of it. You still want to say, okay, you still want, all right.
My name's Chris Hoffer. I've been in the village with a home about 3 years, owned property for 4. And my experience is the board, and since Chet's been here, is the communication has been tremendously better. And I can also tell you that every time I have emailed somebody on the board or Chet, I have received a response. It might not be the response that I want, but it's clear, concise, and they're communicating. So if you have concerns, there is avenue. I heard the board listen to everybody in here that had concerns today. And Chet came up with the idea that we'll put this off today, do a town hall, listen a little more. So I congratulate the board and the executive staff for listening to the property owners.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now let's move on. Chet?
Okay, I'm going to be quick here. So I have several items that I want to talk about. One of them is everybody's hot button, and that is rentals. And when I say everybody's hot button, if you get a chance, cruise the news about rentals. Our sister lake, Norris Lake, right now is in a huge, and when I say huge, I mean huge lawsuit over, wait for it, short-term rentals. So one of the things that I am, and I need to give you a couple updates. I remember that I had brought up the fact that we wanted to make some changes in rentals and we needed a groundswell to get that done, and that we want to try and limit long-term and short-term rentals. Well, here's the bad news. The state of Tennessee has a law that says if I enacted a limit on long-term rentals today on all homes, any single-family home that had been built up to today has the right to rent in perpetuity. So that means as of today, there's 5,400 homes who will forever have the ability to long-term rent, not short-term rent, but long-term rent. And there's not a thing we or I can do about it. So that is the law, and that is basically, I've gone to several different people, and that is the accurate interpretation of that law. So what we do have the ability to address is short-term rentals and multifamily building rentals. And I don't think that I nor the board have enough input from the community to actually formulate something to give to you for you to vote on. Because again, it's one of those things that the community would have to vote on. So I am suggesting, and the board has agreed, to put an ad hoc committee together. Bob Bernetti is going to be the board liaison in that. And I'm going to ask some homeowners to send me some emails if they're interested in being on this particular committee. I would like it to be people preferably who either have or are renting to be a part of that, and a group that is not renting. So we have equal, representation, for lack of a better term. And this is going to be a tough job. Because, and if you read all the news reports, I'll cut to the chase and go through all the 47 paragraphs you'll have to read. The number one problem is that we're messing with people's income. Anytime we get into short-term rentals, long-term rentals, doesn't matter. We are messing in people's income. And that's where our problem lies. So we have to look at it from two angles. What can we do to make the rental process more palatable, meaning they take care of their homes, they don't have 47 people coming into one house, those kinds of things for short-term rentals? And how can we make it so that if you want to rent, you have to pay to play? And that may be a bad expression, but at the end of the day, rentals are unquestionably, short-term rentals specifically, a community like ours is going to end up being a problem if we don't find a way, some way to mitigate it that's appropriate for both sides. Because I have to tell you, there is a ton of people doing short-term rentals that are perfect. They do it really well, and it really benefits the community. It allows people to come, check out the area, stay for a couple days, then they buy a home and move in. So it's not that short-term rentals as they stand are bad. It's that there is that few that are, they're more like a hotel than they are short-term rentals. They've got somebody in there every 3 days. And those are the ones that we want to try and find ways to at least mitigate or have it where it's not so obtrusive to everyone who lives around them. And that would be the goal of that committee anyway. So moving on.
Here, I got something.
No questions till I'm done. Then
No
you can ask
question,
questions.
comment, an educational comment.
Okay.
At our last town hall, I think it was a town hall, might have been a board meeting, not sure. But an HOA representative by the name of Linda Garza stood up and took exception to our term, groundswell of property owners. She said it needs to be spearheaded by somebody. She in fact said, if you recall, the POA needs to take this groundswell and manage it. And then we had a property owner today stand at the microphone, I think it was a gentleman, said something about groundswell, and that's what this is.
Yes.
This is Bob volunteering to manage this process of property owner input. Short-term lease, no issues, get them all together in an ad hoc committee and come up with suggestions.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
All right, moving on. And this is kind of a twofold update. Several weeks ago, 2 weeks ago to be precise, I and the road committee, road committee is right. A highway committee, sorry, I just want to get the names correct. The highway committee and I went and met with TDOT about several issues in traffic in Tellico Village. I know that comes as a shock and surprise, but there is some traffic issues in Tellico Village. Anyway, so we met with them, and thanks to the hard work and efforts of both Billy Pickle and Buddy Bradshaw, our county, our road manager and our mayor, TDOT has moved ahead, and they have agreed to put in a light at Niles Ferry. And that light will be going in now. Before everybody gets excited, it's probably going to be 2 years before that happens. But nonetheless, it has been approved, and more importantly, it has been financed. So those are two really good hurdles to get across. The second one is, as I mentioned about a while ago about the intersection at Milagua and where you come out of Food Lion, it's Chio. Chio is the other opposing road. TDOT had approved us to possibly have a circle. Well, thanks to, again, Billy Pickle and Buddy, they moved that through, and we now have not only permission, we are on the list for that circle to be built, and it too has been funded. And that will be funded by the state and federal. We got to keep it going. So the next thing is, we asked for a traffic study, which had to be initiated by Buddy Bradshaw, which he did, and it was fantastic. And sure enough, TDOT came back and said that that area is approved for a circle. It is on the list, but it has not been. Sequoia and Maple Hill. You're going to drive out to that intersection when you leave here tonight. So it's that area there, which becomes, as I've mentioned before, kind of a Christians and Lions situation, trying to get out into the road. But anyway, that has been approved to be done, but it has not been financed yet. It is on the list to be financed. And last but not least, and this is kind of one that nobody's asked for, but they did a traffic study and came up with this, that on the list, along with our circle here at Sequoia and Maple Hill, is a traffic light at 444 and 72. And that is on the list, but it has not been funded yet, but it is on the list to be funded. So those are the four things that we got back from that. Again, really like to thank Buddy and Billy for taking the lead on this, because it was something we could not do for ourselves. It had to come from the county to get that done. Also, a correction, and I have been known periodically to make remarks, I guess would be the correct word. And at a previous board meeting, somebody asked me a question. To be really honest, I can't remember what the question was, but my answer was, well, Buddy's not doing us any favors. And my point was that was a really stupid remark, number one. But number two, the question was, what is the county getting out of allowing us to have or supplying us with recycling bins? Well, the fact of the matter is they are going to be able to sell our cardboard. So it's kind of a win-win. But it doesn't make them any money. It just pays for the fact that we have a container here by them selling the cardboard. So it's a grand benefit to us. That is on their list in case somebody was going to ask me that question too. It has not, they have not purchased them yet, or let me rephrase that, they have ordered them, they've not come in yet. And so it's still on the list to be brought here and for us to use. And again, my thanks to Buddy for doing that. As a side note, I need everybody to understand that I never asked him for this. He offered that. So that's another key point that I want to point out. The county and Tellico Village are developing really good relations, and I don't want to do anything to ruin that because they are going out of their way to work with us, and I appreciate it sincerely. It'll all be there. I'm sorry, it'll have cardboard, plastic, and, no, nobody will take glass. Tin cans, metal. Aluminum, yeah, aluminum. Now, we asked him, this is another interesting point. I asked him, I said, well, what happens if we want to keep the aluminum? Because in the past, we've taken the aluminum, sold it, and gave the money to either the garden club or somebody. And he said, no, it's cool. We don't, that's not an issue for us at all, because all we do is farm it. We don't even sell it. So that's to our benefit too. Again, just throwing that out there is we're getting a lot of help from those people and working together. Moving on. In an abundance of caution, and I emphasize that, we are putting up signs at Tugaloo Beach advising people not to go swimming 48 hours after a heavy rain, because both there and every other inlet in the village or in the lake has a high level of toxins that come into the water after a super heavy rain. And we just rather people not get in the water and even take the risk of getting sick. So we've put that out there in case you see it and wonder what it's about. That's what it's about. We're also organizing, or have been organizing with UT. They're going to come out with one of their class groups. It's kind of a project for them. And they're going to do some plantings. We've already started it, but granted, we're not really good landscapers. So she came out, and this doctor came out and reviewed this, and she says, hey, I got a class. Why don't we come out as part of the class project and do these plantings for you and help you set up the area? What it is to mitigate the water coming off in a heavy rain and slow it down so all those particulate and all the problems that go into the water get stopped in these plants and hold them off before it gets into the lake. And so, and they do a great job, and they're going to come out and take care of this, and they're going to put up some signs to inform the community about what each of these plants do in that process and why they're there. And so that was going to come off probably in late September, early October, when it begins to cool off, so we can do some plantings without losing the plants. So that is that particular topic. Okay, Tenacity update. The board has given us some directive, and the committee has grabbed those directives and ran with it. We hope to have an initial redrawing and redefining of that process to stay within the guidelines the board has given us by the end of next week. I believe that's what he said, Beth? Yeah, okay. And just as a side point, I would like to point out that God weighed in this week on moving the 9th green. It was struck by lightning. Throwing that out there, not saying anything with it.
May I, and while you're on that, may I make a point, because I get this feedback an awful lot and read it on social media an awful lot. We have made but 2 decisions on this board regarding Tenacity. Am I correct? And I'll name them. One is that we kept golf operating. By doing that, we had to get a temporary clubhouse, temporary cart storage. The golf guys back here sitting in the rear amassed a great group of volunteers that moved carts for 4, 5, 6 months during the winter to move back over and kept golf operating. So we approved those purchases, which big part came from insurance funds. The second one was, what was the second one? I know what
definition of the.
No, it's not a definition. We contracted with an architect.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Only 2 things. There are people that are out there saying, we have made the decision, it's in stone. No, we don't even have a clue how much this thing is going to cost yet. And that's what the board did, to go back to the committee to come up with a best fit solution for that piece of property, and that's what they're working on.
Sure.
We've only made 2 decisions. There is no Tenacity at this point.
Correct. The board has only given us guidelines, definitive guidelines. Okay, one thing I forgot about the roads, and TDOT brought up, a fact that we had discussed vaguely with them, and they came back with a pretty definitive answer. If all of you have noticed all these little vinyl signs that get put in at Chota, right there on the corner, that advertise everything from the rodeo to your Aunt Tina's yard sale or whatever, they are not, they have a zero tolerance for those. They're coming through and they will take all of those out. They will take the signs, the posts, and you have 5 days to come and collect them. If you don't, they're in the trash. And so those will no longer be, or they haven't been allowed, it's just they haven't got to us yet. If you noticed, even at the end of 444 and 72, there used to be a whole raft of them right there along that far side. They're all gone. That's because TDOT passed through, and they're going to come and take ours too. So whatever you have in those signs, or if you belong to a committee that wants to put them up, we have to find a better way. And Beth is here to help you market that or get that stuff out to the community in another way, but we cannot have those signs. Well, it's not us. TDOT will not have those signs up there anymore. They will be taking them out. So I just want to give everybody a heads up on that one. Last but not least, on Kahidi, I have been asked by several homeowners, 11 to be specific, about a peninsula there that has been not been allowed to make a lot of changes to the end, even though some people have done it anyway. Back to those rules thing. I spoke with the Eastern Band of Cherokee, and they would like us to not, they still would like us to not remove those trees, but keep it a natural area. On the other side of that coin, however, they felt that they wanted to admonish TVA to put in riprap around that, because some of the homeowners have asked me, hey, look, I know we can't do anything with this, but can we put up riprap to at least save the land? And theoretically, they cannot. However, I am told, and since the representative of TRDA is here, I won't put him on the spot, but based on that conversation, it is my understanding that they are requesting that TVA take funds and riprap that whole peninsula along there to keep the land from being deteriorated and to save that particular area. Also for Kahidi, the damaged fence line, we finished up, or right now, today, in fact, I understand that they're out doing locates to be sure there is no power lines or anything underneath that area. We're going to redesign that area. That design will go out to the Kahitians next week. We're getting it drawn up with some renderings, and change that whole front end with a swell and a berm and some other things. I'm kind of like you. I've not been privy to this design yet either, but it's been put together by several people, and we want to get it done as quickly as possible, and we will be out there next week. You'll get that, and we'll also be out there next week trying to get this done. One of the concerns that kind of brought this along is the last person who hit that fence came very, very, one more time, very close to making it onto the golf course. And unless we change that design, that fence is not designed to stop that vehicle. It's designed to let it go through. And having somebody come out onto the golf course, number one, is damaging, but they have a very high possibility of hurting themselves way worse than hitting the fence off that drop into the golf course. So that's coming. So we haven't been ignoring you. That's what they've been working on, and we plan to get that started this coming week. I think that's the only updates I have. Yes, sir.
Yes, I don't know how to turn this on, but Larry Rolap.
You're on, buddy.
Okay, thank you. You talked about Tennessee
Yes.
rebuild. Could you share with the group the critical path and some projected timing? I know it's fluid, but can you give us some idea of how you're progressing?
So our goal is to take our drawings next week, which will be fairly detailed, meaning there will not just be a rendering of the footprint, but more like where we're going to put the kitchen, how we're going to design that, electrical, all those kinds of things, with our goal being to go out to bid to get some contractor bids, because we've been given a parameter of what it can cost. So until we get that, we don't know what that parameter is. We've got some pretty good guesses, but that's all they are, is good guesses. So before the end of September, we hope to have numbers and solid things for the board to look at and vote on one way or the other. And then, for argument's sake, we come back, it's under $7,000, everybody's happy, Bob's our uncle. Yeah, 7 million, 1 0, come on, send me. Anyway, 7 million, 2 zeros? 2 zeros. Yes. And this would be why I'm the CEO and not the CFO. Anyway, moving on. That, once we have that, to your point, then we're going to run with it and get things set up. Our goal, however this plays out, here's our goal. We want to have everything in place to be voted on and being built, by the end of this year. So that come February, March, when the weather gets good again, that they can be breaking ground to move ahead. Also, by then, we should have all the basement issues done, and we can work the property, we can work the land up to get it started. So the goal here is, regardless of what the steps are in between, is to be breaking ground by March of next year. That's part of that process, yes. And the insurance is looking better all the time, and for some reason, I need to say this again so that everybody hears me. We are suing the insurance company. It's a lawsuit. That's what litigation means. So we are suing the insurance company for the rest of the money because they're telling us that we should be able to build on a obvious, not buildable foundation. And so, yes, we are suing them for that, and our suit looks very solid, very good. They're doing a lot of bobbing and weaving and transferring, and that's what insurance companies do. And, but ultimately, we feel that we have a really, really good chance of getting the rest of the funds that we need to have that basement reviewed, or removed and replaced.
When's the next court date on
Have no idea. Because it's been moved from local, state to federal court, which translates it moved from one side of town to the other, but nonetheless, that's the court system. And I don't know, Kevin, if you want to make a comment on that, I don't think I've covered anything.
Right now, it's in its very preliminary stages of the litigation. There is no court date scheduled. There are some preliminary scheduling matters that council will handle, but it's not going to be on a court docket for some time.
All right, so in the long run, then, if we...
Can you use the mic? You have to go to the mic. Thank you.
Mike Robbins, Mialaco area. In the long run, if we proceed with this, then do we pay for the inspectors to inspect and do the reports? Or will that be on their end? They got to pay for it?
We've already done that, and that's part of the claim ultimately on the back end. We have had our own experts and structural engineers review. They've rendered certain preliminary opinions, and that'll be subject of the lawsuit. But we have retained them independently, but that's part of our ultimate claim, if we prevail, is to get reimbursed for certain of those costs.
Okay, Marty, I was going to make just a couple quick comments at the end. I'll do it now. Counselor, thank you for the clarity on the legal issues at the beginning of the meeting. Sir, sitting next to Chet, you also added some, Steve, you added some great clarity today on issues and reports and documentation that people have when they close. Whenever you move into a community like this, whether it's Tellico Village or Del Webb, there's going to be rules. It's good to have rules. We need to back it up with some teeth, with fines, but there's got to be some practicality and fairness with all that. And of course, that'll be brought out more in town meetings and more meetings like this in the future. I have an idea, Chet. How many people, by the way, when you take homeowners and landowners, what percentage of emails does the office have? What would you say? 80, 90?
Oh, almost all. I don't think I ever get an email from a property owner. I get all my emails from homeowners.
Well, how many do we have if we wanted to send out something like a survey?
What percentage?
What percentage?
We have about 6,000 people that are subscribed, or 6,000 email addresses that are subscribed to the Telegram. But that doesn't tell us there could be 2 emails per household.
Right.
People
Okay.
have to opt into that.
Sure. So, Chet, I went to a general manager in one of my past lake communities, and it had to do with some issues that I thought were important, and I also brought them up to other member residents, and they agreed with it. And I said, hey, why don't you send a survey out where people's names are not attached or an address? It goes out to their email. There may be 5, 7, 10 questions. 2 or 3 were on some things I thought were important, and he did that. I thought the response on some of the yeses as far as nuisance issues in a particular area were going to be maybe 7% of the community. He was shocked, and I was surprised. It came up to 24%. 24% is a lot of people. So therefore, you guys would get some knowledge, and it was brought up earlier, I believe, that this is how the community is responding to maybe 5 or 6 or 7 questions. You're going to get a yes or a no. Maybe you want to put a notes section in there, but why don't we do it? Now, when people vote the board members in, they have some knowledge on the board member. That's why they're voting that board member in. You guys then have the knowledge and the wherewithal to make proper decisions for all of us. That's a given. However, sometimes we do a little thing like a survey. It gives you a little bit more input, and then the board makes what they think is a proper decision. Also, Chet, last but not least, thank you for your work that you've done on all of these issues. The staff's been great. I'm sure everybody appreciates it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Are you done?
I'm
All
done.
right.
Let's rock.
We need to keep moving here. Let's go to Golf Pro Shops Maintenance, Casey and Wells.
We know we're kind of up against it, so we'll be pretty quick through this. We're going to kind of start off on the golf maintenance side of things. For those that don't know, I'm Wells McClure, the Director of Golf Maintenance. And just kind of starting out, this is just kind of our August maintenance update. We're going to start back at the beginning of the year. The winter time is a good time in golf maintenance to do a lot of things indoors when the weather's not very conducive to be outside. We refurbish all of our range furniture, tee markers, ball washers, etc. The next few slides will just be some other projects that we all kind of focus on. You'll see an ongoing theme at all 3 of these. Drainage is kind of the main theme at all 3 golf courses. We've got a lot of our major golf course renovation projects over with, so we're kind of going interior in the golf course, trying to figure out ways to improve some of the playing areas, primarily in the fairways. So again, Kahiti's identified areas last year, this year, ongoing drainage work. Picture on the right, you'll see some of their greens expansion that they've done. These are areas of the greens at Kahiti in particular where Bermuda grass encroachment has crept into the green, making some areas of the green a little smaller. Jordan's staff does a great job kind of going in, cutting that out, and reclaiming that area as part of the putting surface, and we're hoping to expand upon that this year, and then in a little more in-depth next year with some larger areas. Moving on to Tenasseee, again, the theme continues with drainage. It's been an ongoing problem at Tenasseee, and we've installed over 2,000 feet of drainage the last 2 winters, and we plan to continue that on this year. We've done about 4 holes total, and we're going to just continue to pick away at it. And we look for other ways to continue to improve the look of the golf course. A big one was replacing the old fence that was installed some 15 years ago with split rail fence along 444 behind number 18, which is another big visual improvement for folks driving up and down the parkway to kind of see the golf course. And then Tokwa, if those have played Tokwa this year, one of their big golf course improvements was on the dog leg on number 18. That area has always been hard to grow grass. It didn't have irrigation, so the team at Tokwa did all this work in-house. They added some drainage in some of the low areas and added irrigation along the cart path. And then where we've historically had mulch, they were able to find a shade-tolerant zoysia grass species. We came in and sodded all that this year, and it's really coming around. And the playability, the look, and the reduced ongoing maintenance of mulch areas is going to be a nice touch. So those guys at Tokwa really nailed that one. Moving on a little further into the spring was our greens aerification. We did that at all 3 golf courses this year on a 3-week interval. It's a very aggressive practice. We really kind of get into them in the spring to dilute the organic matter. All 3 of our golf courses have old greens. Tenassee's the oldest, and to prolong the length, the lifespan of these greens, we've got to continue to dilute that organic layer in the top of the green. So that's what we do. We get after them every year in the spring, and ever since I've been here, I guess this will be the 13th summer I've been in Tellico Village Golf, which is hard to believe, but The greens were in pretty rough shape coming in 2011, and since then they've just continued to improve every year. And this aggressive spring aerification is definitely part of our success, along with some other things that we do. And then falling into the summer, it's been a very successful summer of some pretty big tournaments. Starting out, the third week of June was our member guest tournament, the Red Tail Hawk Invitational. Again, it went off without a hitch. Shout out to Casey and his staff. Those guys nailed it on the front of the house side of things. And it was hosted at Kahidi and Tokwa, again, like it normally is. And those guys had just phenomenal golf course. This year was a little different than years past. We had a pretty rough winter, followed by a lot of traffic in the spring from golf, folks playing, and then a very cool spring. So some of our Bermuda surfaces were not quite where they normally are coming into that tournament, but the putting greens were absolutely outstanding and continue to be to this day. And then following the member guest was the Tennessee Golf Association State Match Play Championship at Kahidi. TGA has kind of put Tellico Village on their calendar every year, it seems like, the last few years. And it's a big I feel like a big compliment to us and our facilities. And the fact that they'll continue to come back just tells us that, that the folks that play in that and then the people in charge of TGA think that Tellico Village has some of the best golf facilities in the state. And so we're really proud of the work those guys did. Again, Jordan's staff nailed it. The golf course is perfect, and we got tons of compliments from the best players in the state that play the best golf courses in the state, and many of them said it was some of the best conditioned greens they've seen all year. So just a really shout out to Jordan's team. A little bit on the weather. Again, we had a pretty cool spring, kind of slow to green up, and a pretty dry early part of the year from mid-June to or mid-April to mid-June. We had 3.5 inches of rain. And I'm going to update this number from late June to this past event. We've had close to 18 inches of rain on this end of the village. I think it was a little less over in Vonore. But a lot of wind damage. So I think we've lost around a dozen trees between Kahidi and Tokwa, Tokwa and Tanasi these last few weeks. Again, we try to do as much of that tree work in-house as we can, but there are some that have some safety-related issues with them we've had to contract out. But for the most part, we're able to take care of all that in-house. And the weather just creates problems from a maintenance perspective. You get the golf course perfect, you get a 3-inch downpour, and it takes a couple days to recover from that. So that's just some of the things we've been up against here. Again, following member guests, we all started to focus on our warm season grass cultivation and aeration. So you can see here some pictures of some of the stuff that's been done at all 3 golf courses. And this is all to improve playability, drainage, again, just to improve the surface for our golfers. A few projects we've been having going on. At Tanasi, we built 2 new forward tees, and expanded an existing tee. The most forward tee on number 4, we increased the size of it by 400%. It had about 500 square feet of usable space, and now it's got a little over 2,000. And then we built a new forward tee on 15 and 17 to put those up closer to the cart path, a little better shot option, and it'll really come in handy on cart path only days. So that was a big help. 6 years ago, we got certified as an Audubon Cooperative Sanctuary Golf Course through the Audubon Society, and every 3 years you have to recertify. 3 years ago, we had a site visit. This is the year we're recertifying again, where we're kind of just reapplying all our paperwork, updating some of our plant lists, and just showing some of the ongoing projects that we have. So by the end of this year, we'll be recertified for another 3 years. And that's a big feather in our cap to show that, the golf courses are doing the right thing. We're not just out there maintaining the golf courses for the golfers. We're also doing it for the environment and the wildlife that inhabit our golf courses. And just finish out on the greens. Again, you kind of see the picture on the right is after an aggressive spring aeration, and the pictures on the left are putting surfaces. Right now we've got 54 holes at Tellico Village that are all absolutely phenomenal, and the practices that we put in place allow us to kind of deal with the amount of play that we have and produce championship quality conditions day in and day out. So just kudos to the maintenance teams. It's been a really, really good year. Again, in 13 years, I don't know if I can remember a year we've consistently been as good day in and day out as we have been this year. So Mother Nature helps, but the staff and the practices that these guys do really, really hammer it home. So that's a quick golf maintenance update. Pass it off to Casey.
Awesome. Casey Flanagan, Director of Golf Operations. Just, I'll go through this quick again. A rounds report. Rounds were through the roof. We did 12,621 rounds in Tellico Village in the month of July. So when you think about clubs that are, when I say clubs, private clubs close to us, a busy year for them is 25,000 rounds. And we're going to eclipse over 100,000 rounds across our 3 golf courses this year. So Tellico Village Golf is booming, and a large part of that is our leagues. In the events we conduct, this is our ladies 9-hole league who has their annual Solheim Cup, a red team and a blue team. Through July, which is 211 days on the calendar, we have conducted 181 events within Tellico Village Golf. So that's a huge testament to not only our membership and our patrons who want to participate, but to our staff. That takes a lot of bodies, both on Wells' side and our side of the fence, and working together, and I think that's just, again, true testament to what we have in our operation. The Tenacity transition, our motto, as you see at the top, was #TenacityStrong. Since August 27th, that staff has continued every day to kill it. This is just an example of where we were beginning of the year. I'll take you on the timeline here. We did set up a mobile golf shop within that snack shack, which is about 1/8 of this room. We offered a food and beverage thank you to AWE and Andy Fox and his team, who worked every day with us on that in order to provide food and beverage to our patrons. And then again, the can-do attitude. I mean, we had staff members going in there in the middle of January, cold mornings, so they stuck through that, luckily enough to get us where we are today. The golf cart storage, obviously, after the fire, we continued for 7 months. We were forced to shuttle carts to the Public Works building. Thank you to Clayton Taylor and his team for letting us do that. They moved a lot of equipment and stuff out of the way for us to go store 60 golf cars over there. And we couldn't have done this without the volunteers. I know many of the people in this room and on this board and sitting behind me, I saw you every day, and we couldn't have done that without you. You can't imagine the man hours that would have taken if we wouldn't have had 6 or 7 people for every shift. So thank you to those that did that for those 7 months. On February 11th of 23, we did finally construct the temporary cart storage building. We were moved in there. This fills the temporary need for golf cars. If you haven't seen this, I'm sure most of you had, but definitely serves its purpose for what we need in the meantime until we can get our new clubhouse. So we're happy to have this, and it's working out great for the time being. Our modular we received and moved in latter part of March. This, again, fills the transition need that we feel that we need. This is a nice building as far as the lounge area. The back deck, if you haven't seen it, I've got some photos there, and is right next to the temporary cart storage area. So it's very, very efficient for what we need. It still allows us to utilize our starter shack. Again, Tenacity Golf missed 1 day after the fire of operations. So huge shout out to that staff. On the left, you just see a picture of the lounge area. Some people enjoying beverage of choice, and on the right is the pro shop operation with the counter. There's also an office in there and a very good merchandise presence for our retail operation as well. This is the deck, the back deck. It's a really good view. It's shaded during the evenings. We got the umbrellas, great place to enjoy a light snack or your beverage of choice. Again, just another way to give an option to our players. A consistent theme I was hearing and noticing in our rounds early in the year, especially in the April time frame, was players were not requesting to play Tenacity due to the lack of food and beverage. And Beth called me one day and had a great alternative here. This Miss Sue Fisher, who is local to Loudoun County. She's great if you haven't met her. We called and we made an agreement for her to move in July and start an operation and try it 1 month, and we're August 16th and she's still there, so that can tell you how good it was. But this is a standalone New York City style hot dog vendor. Again, it helped me deflect some loss of rounds due to the food and beverage. The last thing we need is someone not playing our tremendous facility that our staff works so tirelessly to provide, and just because they don't have anything to eat. So this fills the void. She works closely with the leagues, and it's just a tremendous success, and she's been a great partner for us. Another initiative I drove and Chet pushed me forward with was the Bev Cart at Tenacity. This is owned by our Director of Outside Operations, Chris Henderson. He kind of rigged this up for us, and it's been great. His daughter actually was moving from the west part of the country and was willing to do this. We ended up getting 3 beverage cart girls, 2 of which have gone back to school for the summer, but this was a tremendous success. And you can see this is through July. The beverage cart has a net total after our payments and expenses and payroll of almost 14 grand. So this is found revenue thanks to that. So I'm very proud to not only have the food and beverage operation inside, but also on the golf course as well. Wells touched on Red-tailed Hawk Invitational. Father's Day weekends, our champions were Gary and Ryan Norgren. Pretty cool moment for them. I'm sure a moment they'll never forget. Our junior golf camp went off without a hitch. That was July 11th through 15th. We had 60 juniors. Each junior got 5 hours of instruction. Then they had a tournament, lunch, and an awards play following play. I know my daughter participated and had a blast. She actually played with Bob's granddaughters in the tournament, and they had a great time. So this is a great way to reduce the average age in Tellico for a week and really show off what we can do as a staff. Wells touched on match play. I'll give you some of the data from the social media side. The Tennessee Golf Association estimates about over 40,000 social media impressions. I think that's incredible exposure for Tellico Golf, Tellico Village, everyone. The Strawberry Plains native Cooper Hayes won, and interesting fact, he was the second alternate into the event, so he wasn't even in the original field. 2 people dropped out, Cooper got in and won. So really neat just to showcase our golf course and testament. Moving forward, this is a frequency distribution that my good friend Steve Schneider did for me at the end of 2022 when I gave him some good data. Just to let you know, the Golf Advisory Committee will be taking a close look at the 2024 programming, as it's very important that we understand how much annual golf is being played and price that fairly to the consumer and the operation as well. Other than that, we have Golf Talk, which will be my final topic. Golf Talk, which is hosted by Pat White and myself and Wells. That's been really fun. We just completed our 5th episode. You can find that on the Tellico Village Broadcasting YouTube page and network. I'm sorry, Tellico Village networking page, who's broadcasting this for live right now. So I think that's been great. We talk about trending topics as well as upcoming topics on Wells' side of things as well. So happy with the way things are going. Any questions from the board about golf operations or golf maintenance?
I just want to thank both of you for doing an outstanding job. The courses I've been back on the last month, and they're fantastic. So thank you and your staff.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Good job. Thanks. Okay, next is Beth, Marketing Communications.
Yeah, everybody put on your speed ears.
I am going to do my absolute best to get us back on track. All right, so I'm here today to update the board and the audience on the first half marketing program. I have with me today 2 of the marketing subcommittee, Fred Toucher and Joe Bogardus. Everyone else is back holding down the fort. So what we're going to discuss today is the national housing market status, marketing programs performance for the first half, and recent performance trends, balance of the outlook for 2023, and then a little footnote about our adjustment of marketing for inflation. So jumping right in, let's look at the national housing market. Existing home sales have experienced declines of 20 to 33% for every quarter previous year. So we're looking at the third quarter 2022 through the second quarter of 2023. Housing starts experienced declines of 18% to 25% for the same period. And most recent second quarter 2023 performance in both existing homes and housing starts are down 20 and 21%. Existing home media selling price increase versus previous year have declined each of the last 6 quarters, turning negative for the first time during 2023. And this is the national housing market. Keep that in mind. And this is just a graph to show you existing home sales versus housing starts. And then existing single-family existing median home selling price is down 2.4% nationally. Now let's look at the marketing program's performance. Tellico Village residential real estate market performed well during the first half of 2023, especially when you compare that to the national market. MLS residential sales are up 21%. Sales to marketing leads equals 64% of all MLS homes sold. And just keep in mind that program sales come in at 242 during 2022 was a record high for Tellico Village. Database lead and discovery program This is relatively the strength of what we've experienced so far this year. Database leads are tracking 2022 performance, so it's pretty much flat. But most of that comes to the great performance done by digital, which is up 23%, and that offsets the decline in other areas. Discovery tour requests and visits are exceeding 2022 performance. We're up 26% for discovery requests and up 4% for discovery tour completed. So Karis has been extremely busy. Residential property values are averaging $258 per square foot for the first half, and that's up 4%. The average equity per home, if you look at an average size home in Tellico Village, which is about 2,300 square feet, is $27,000. This represents a 5-year average equity increase of 70% or $256,000 for every Tellico Village home. Here's a chart that shows that. We started the marketing program in 2013. The average selling price per square was $121, and today it's at $258, and that's the trend year over year. When you look at Tellico Village lot sales, MLS sales are down for lots about 35%, and sales to marketing leads for lots sold is 49% of MLS sold. A lot of this is signaling normal growth per the pandemic or post the pandemic. When you look at POA lot sales, they're down 73%. At about 35 sales for the first half, and this represents a continuation of what we were seeing in the second half of 2022. A lot of this is due to low inventory. We just don't have a lot available right now, and what we do have, we're having to work to clean up the title. It should be noted that we are on track to hit our goal for this year, which was 65 POA lot sales. When you look at marketing revenue, we have an all-in net revenue of $1.3 million. So total revenue come in at 1.6, and then marketing expenses and costs for the first half of the year is just under $300,000. And so the net return on investment is 475%. And the way we look at that is we break it down for revenue versus expenses. We have contractor revenue for advertising, realtor program partners, and other advertising, POA lot sale revenue, assessment revenue, and then we look at the fees associated with those lots that we can track back to being sold from the marketing program for new housing starts. And then for expenses, we take all expenses of staff, the welcome center, building expense, depreciation, POA lot taxes, and ACC oversight to get that $1.3 million.
Quick question before you go off of that. Question for Chet or the rest of the board. Do we use this data for anything, this sheet?
Just for your knowledge, we were asked by the board to provide a better, closer look from a marketing standpoint since we're not a standalone department. And this comes from accounting.
Yeah, I used it to evaluate. Steve was the one that asked for it.
Use your microphones, gentlemen.
I thought it was in existence before I showed up.
No, it was for you.
Yeah, good try, but no. I use it to evaluate the growth of the community and the speed in which that growth is and what areas that we're growing in, resale versus new homes, that sort of stuff. And I also use the new home numbers to evaluate and work with Public Works as to determine what they need in terms of upcoming homes, or at least to get a guess at what we're going to need the following year based on those numbers.
Well, I guess my question was particular to this one page, because I met with Mickey 2 months ago about my concerns. He claimed to not have any knowledge where any of these numbers came from. He didn't provide any data for the numbers. In a particular note, you got 900,000 of revenue. That's like 900 lots, which I assume is every lot you've ever sold in the last 10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're
That was sold due to our efforts.
Right.
Yeah.
But so in other words, you're going to take credit for those forever, an ever-growing number that would then be compared to this year's expenses.
Well, they wouldn't be coming in continuously if they wouldn't have been sold.
Right, but
And I did meet with Mickey after you met with Mickey, and he had told me he got back with you because, one, he didn't understand where the numbers come from, too, although his department put them together. So he did have an understanding before he left and agreed with the numbers.
so that's my first thing is, we're going to, this 900 is going to continue to grow forever. right? And then we're going to compare it to this year's expenses and say, look, what a great job, return on investment we did by selling these lots over the last 10 years.
Well, you can't deny that it's been a return on investment. They
Yeah,
weren't making any
right.
money before.
Yeah, the converse is, if the lot's sitting out there with trees growing on it, and it's not
Right.
collecting assessment,
There's
she can't put that number in there.
We're not
And now if you
showing
put the number in there,
the
you're gonna
opportunity
complain
cost
about.
either. We gave away a lot of lots at very low cost. A perfect example, somebody that moved in here 2 years ago, a good friend of mine, go over to their house a lot, beautiful lot. They're proud that they paid $5,000 for that lot. I mean, flat, common area behind them, trees. 2 doors down, somebody sold a private lot and got $25,000 for it. So in my mind, well, we should have a $20,000 opportunity cost on the right that we gave it away for $5,000.
So you have to look at the history, John, and you can't look at today's data. We also were standing at a point in time where we had almost 700 lots on the market that were owned by the POA. The board asked me to come up with a program to sell the lots, and I did that, and we've sold the lots. And so, yes, some of that included selling them a little bit cheaper, but at the time, when I first started here, you couldn't give a POA lot away. And so every year, the program has changed to get more and more advantageous for the property owners. I don't think it's any joke that I want to do my best for the POA. And so always at top of mind. So yes, now we're selling lots at between $13,000 and $18,000 that are POA lots versus what was happening before the pandemic. Supply and demand, too.
Okay, so that's the question we have to answer. If we're going to ever put any stock in this page, how long do we keep this clock running of 900,000, next year it'll be 1 million, and compare it to this year's cost? Okay, why don't we, if we're going to do that, let's compare it to 10 years of marketing costs then. I mean, apples to
We
apples.
can meet with FAC, because this actually started with an FAC committee. It was a report kind of created also for them. So I'll get with Judy and Jim, and we'll look at that.
And the other thing I brought up with Mickey was, you're taking credit for all the revenue for the ACC and water and sewer fees, but not the cost. We only have a 48% margin on ACC, 20% margin on the water and sewer fees. So you can't take the revenue without the cost.
We're not taking all the revenue. That's a very small percentage of it.
But
Because
it's
the
the ones
tank installs
associated
more.
with the lots sold,
But
right?
still, it's not all the revenue. It's just a percentage of it. Because the tank install costs, what, $11,000, and we're not taking $11,000.
How much?
I'll be happy to get with you and go over this in more detail if you'd
Well, like I said,
like.
I don't want anybody to be, under the impression that we brought in this 1.6 million and it only cost us 290,000.
John, I've been fighting this windmill for a time. I would love for you to get into this and come back with with Beth on what the numbers have a more reasonable, accurate picture.
Well, it's got to be apples to apples, right? We can't have apples and oranges and put it up there and say this is the holy grail. Because I'm assuming your cost is not in that salary number, right?
Huh? Nah.
So
we'll
let's,
save
why
it.
don't we do this? Why don't we just make that as a to-do for you and Beth to get together and see if there's a more meaningful way to present these numbers.
Right. I mean, if
Okay.
this is just put out there and we don't put any stock in it, I don't care what it says, right? But if Chet last time, that's why I went and talked to Mickey. Chet last time said, I use this as a scorecard for, are we getting a return on our investment in marketing? And when you got $900,000, you're always going to get a fantastic return, but it reflects 10 years of work, not 6 months.
Okay, let's
go
take
on
that
that.
as an action item.
It should be on.
Is it on?
Yep.
Two things, John. I'm Fred Toucher, I'm on the marketing committee. Two things. One, this is the way it was set up with the board and financial at the beginning, okay? Second is the fact that what you're saying is true. This was set up as a little company. They wanted to see it run that way. And how would you do it? All the costs you're talking about over 10 years have been included in past years.
Right.
So yeah. And everything that you're seeing on this, I'm not defending, we could look at it another way. But everything that you're seeing here are 2000, first half 2023 revenue that would have not been generated, without me breaking this, it would have not been generated without the marketing program. So we'll be happy to talk to you. This is something that was done by financial, agreed to with the board, but we'll be happy to go through it with you.
Right, so I'm welcome to sit down and go through it, because like I said, it's just apples and oranges.
Okay.
Moving on. All right. So let's look at recent performance trends and for the balance of 2023 outlook. So back to the national housing market. In June 2023, the performance suggests little relief from the trends of last year, with existing home sales down 18.8%, and single-family housing starts are down 8.1%. And the median single-family home sale price nationally is at $416,000. In context to this, Tellico Village real estate marketing is performing extremely well outside of the national housing market. Our bottom line residential performance continues to be positive, especially in June and July. We saw an increase in MLS home sales of 15%, and average sales price was up 3%. Important programs impacting the bottom line were the database leads, which were up, requests, and discovery tours all being up. Also, recent page digital performance is mainly responsible for all this success. Some of the paid digital incentives that we've been working on this year is we had some website messaging and content were added. We actually added several different pages to the website to help with Google search. We also started Performance Max that was developed and launched and optimized. PPC performance was reinvigorated through a variety of initiatives. Monies were reallocated from other marketing to increase our digital spend, and the success is demonstrated through that. When you look at the first 7 months of digital performance, we spent 24% more, and our conversions were also up 68%, but our conversion price was down 26%, which is exceptional. We've really accelerated this through the summer, which was pre-planned, and recent digital performance has been exceptional in all terms of both effectiveness and efficiency. Balance of the year, we believe that we're going to end the year on a positive trend, and we're set to hit all of our goals. A large part of this is based on the database leads, discovery requests, and the visits are stronger than what we expected. And there are other factors impacting the outlook for the year, which includes things that we cannot control, like the economy, mortgage rates, Fed hikes, etc. And then this is just a footnote to explain that marketing has requested and received $405,000 for the last 8 years. We've not asked for any increase, and we understand the charge this year as well. But we just wanted to point out that our average really spend for 2024 is going to be about $300,000 based on this. Thus far, efficiencies in the program are really responsible, and there's a lot of hard work that goes into producing great numbers with no more money, and I just want to make sure that the team gets the credit due for that, and some of it's a little bit of luck. And then this is just a slide to show you the inflation and the budget allocation for the last couple of years and what we've been dealing with. And then questions, any new questions? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, with that, we'll move on. Food service bids. Mitzi.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I mentioned this last month. We actually sent bid packages out to 7 different groups. 3 bids were actually returned. The committee that has reviewed these bids it's made up of myself, Mike Braddock, who's an FAC member. I think he's here today somewhere. Yes, there's Mike. John Orr, who's a board member, and Jeff DeGula, who is our purchasing manager. We've reviewed the proposals and presented the information to the board as of recently this morning, and we also reviewed an option of bringing it in-house. The committee, along with the board, agreed to call the bidders back in one by one. We have those meetings beginning to get scheduled as soon as next week to discuss the proposals and review their numbers. Our objective is to agree on a joint venture profit-sharing agreement. And so we want to go back to these groups of folks and say, hey, let's look at this again. Let's go back to the drawing board, see what you can do, in addition to reviewing that based upon us bringing it in-house as well. We want to be sure that we, make the right choice. The board and the committee will meet again at the end of this month. We've already got that scheduled for August the 30th. At that time, our committee would hope to have a recommendation for the board. We do, it's just a side note, we do intend on creating a food service committee, regardless of whether or not we bring this in-house or pick a current, contractor as it is now. We just have had lots of comments and suggestions, and we feel like the growth of Tellico Village now would be a good time to implement that advisory committee. And then as far as our timeline goes, we have a scheduled date of 9/15 or sooner to notice the award. So we're right on track with where we said we would be. But just wanted to keep everybody in the loop. Those proposals are still being evaluated right now, and we should have an update by the next board meeting.
May want to mention that the qualifications to be on this new food service committee would be people that have experience in food service versus experience eating.
In eating, that's right. That's right. And in addition, between now and then, we don't have a food service committee, therefore we don't have a charter. We don't have, the actual guidelines and an application for a food service committee, so we need to get that rolling as well. So there's a little bit of work to get that done. But I think the timing for creating a new advisory committee is a good time, because in October, we start accepting applications for all the other advisory committees, and they would be appointed in January, just like everybody else, and get on a normal rotation. So that's kind of where we are with the food service.
All right, thank you. Next up is Mr. Hinckley, Finance Review.
Good afternoon. I'm Jim Hinckley, Senior Financial Analyst for the POA. I would like to extend a warm welcome to our new CFO, Judy Bedford, who is here for the first time in her first week of work here. And
welcome, Judy.
As far as I know, Pat, unless something dramatically changes.
No, I thought somebody called my name.
That's right, Steve. I apologize for the size. Anyway, looking at the balance sheet, cash is up 3.6 million since the start of the year, mostly right now with the ebbs and flows of capital expenditures. The net is basically the insurance money that was received at the beginning of the year. As far as our investments in the cash reserve, no investments came to maturity in July. The next round of maturity that we are expecting is in September. There's about $1.5 million due then. Inventory has been asked of me before. It's still on the high side. It's about, 1.1 million. Most of it's made up of construction material inventory, and that's necessary for the Public Works to install water lines, sewer lines, installs for homes. They have to have a ready, available inventory in order to not only meet today's needs, but those needs coming up in the near future. I've spoken with Clayton, and he feels at this point the inventory is necessary for the continuing operations of the Public Works. Also, Chet had spoken to the group as far as reiterating what is in inventory, how it's being conducted, to get an absolute definitive answer on what exactly is in inventory in Public Works, and do we need it, and if we need it, do we have enough of it going forward? So that's all I really have to say about inventory. I just wanted to share what I have found. Continue.
Do you have an aging report of that inventory?
I do not, but I will work on it.
Is there any plans to do an aging to see how old some of this stuff is?
I will work with Clayton on that, and I will have that answer back to the board before the next board meeting.
One of the issues that I brought up with the inventory for all departments, not just Public Works, is that we have to be sure that we are accounting for those things that will take a lengthy amount of time to replenish. And I use the bad example, and I don't know if Simon's still here or not, but if Simon did not have an extra pump for the pools on hand, and that pump dropped, and it took him 6 months to replace that pump because he just can't get it shipped to him, it would be very difficult to explain to the homeowners why the pool is down for 6 months. And so we have to be proactive in terms of doing that. And we also, if somebody's in the process of building their home and we don't have all the necessary material to put in that septic system, then we're going to put that homeowner behind the curve. And so we have to plan ahead and have that material on hand based on, and that's the tricky part, based on what current timing is of being able to replace that material.
Thank you. Continuing on, one of the things I would like to bring to your attention is, in this next slide, the board had approved the payoff of the Welcome Center loan, and I would like to report that that was paid off as of last Wednesday, August 9th, in full. So that's not reflected in these numbers, but they will be reflected going forward.
So, just so I have that right.
Yes.
So our cash position is the 20,242,000 minus the
Minus-
payoff amount, which is like
Correct.
287 or something like that.
In that ballpark, yes.
287,000.
Yes.
I'm going to break my rule. I didn't ask you, give you the question before today, but we have in the reserves, we've got money in there for what's called, where is it? It is the compliance assurance agreement, where people give us a fee instead of taking a bond out.
Okay.
Years ago, we set a limit, I believe it was 85,000? 50. And my understanding is that money's in in our reserves. In the event someone starts a build, can't finish it, we step in and finish the outside of the building. So the question is, for you, is to look at that and see if 50 grand is enough, or do we need to start taking the fees and building the reserve up to a more acceptable level?
Well, and that's actually a good point, because that 50 grand was established about 5 years ago.
Right.
Well, then I think I can, with some assurity, say, yeah, we got a bigger number in after 5 years, of course.
How big does it need to be so we can
We'll get the answer to that.
start building?
Yeah, I believe it was based on what it would cost us to tear down a building.
Okay. Sorry for that.
No worries. Coming out to the profit and loss, revenues are up year over year and over budget. This looks a little funky. Cost of sales is still out of whack, and again, I've been addressing this for the last at least 3 or 4 months that I've been here. This is driven by the Public Works sewer tank installs. However the budget was created, I'm not certain. I will continue answering questions about this for the rest of the year. In the budget of last year, we had 140 tank installs as the budgeted item. We're already at 143 through the first 7 months of this year versus 183 of last year. I'm working with Clayton to assure that this does not happen going forward. But if you look at particularly the tank installs year over year, much more in line with those two numbers than it was to the budgeted numbers. Salary and benefits are trending under budget for 2023. As far as I can see, that number should continue the balance of the year, and we should be able to book savings versus the budget. The maintenance line is also off. Spoke to Clayton again. Most of it's to do with water line maintenance. The budget last year was built upon historical data, where my understanding is the POA had some large water main breaks, which were costly over the last couple of years. This year, fortunately for the POA, they've only had minor leaks, and there hasn't been very many water main breaks, so there is savings built in there. Again, if that trend continues throughout the year, we should be able to book savings to that effect. Finally, I just wanted to highlight gas and fuel was budgeted at $5 plus a gallon, We obviously have not been spending that money this year, so that would be another budgetary savings item. Finally, the reserve maintenance budget still looks a little out of whack, and I'm going to use an accounting term in that it's timing. I know for certain that the parking lot behind the wellness center was finished yesterday. That will be hitting that line. There's also several roads that the board has approved that will be hitting that line as well. So I will open up to any questions as far as that's concerned. I'm not sure why it's looking just like that, to tell you the truth. But it should be in the packets that I sent out last Thursday, and I apologize to the members of the audience who can't see it, but it will be posted in its entirety.
Now, I don't get the packets that you send out to the FAC, so if you could include me in the monthly packet.
I can certainly, and I believe you got a full packet on Thursday, I believe, with everything that's sent to the FAC. You
So
get
it
the,
must be a separate file on the SharePoint or something? It's what?
It's part of the total file. I'm looking at it right here.
Oh.
Chet, I do have, we're getting ready for budget season. What I'd like to see next month would be, if you take a look at our 23 capital budget, not maintenance that comes out of reserve, capital. Of those projects that we put in the budget, what will not be done? So is it 6 projects totaling 2 million? Is it, just so we have a feel?
Completely, yep, already on.
Yep, thank you.
Because, he says, because the theory, as all of my staff has been informed, probably ad nauseum, is that if you say you're going to spend that money, you better spend it. And if you didn't spend it, that means a project didn't get done, or you better have a good reason why. And there are some good reasons why, but very seldom is there a good reason why you didn't spend the money. And I know that may sound counterintuitive, but if I'm going to come to the board and say, I want $7 million, and I end up at the end of the year only spending $4 million, and everybody goes, yay, I'm going, no, it's not yay. What did you not get done? And that's the problem with this kind of, and this is why he wants to see it.
Right.
Is that he wants to understand, what did we not get done and why?
Yeah, we used to call that going out of business looking good.
Yeah, right, yeah, exactly. And so, and people's bonuses and that sort of thing are weighed against that as well. It's not just that they save money. You don't get points for not doing something and calling that saving money. So those are the things that we're trying to get everyone to understand. And to that end, and I don't know if this is a good place to bring it up or not, but this year we are going to do a zero-based budget process. And for those who don't know, what that means is instead of having a budget already filled out for you with a certain percentage, they're going to have a blank line next to every field that they have to maintain, and they have to build their budget from zero and explain why they got there, how they got there, and what those numbers mean. The point of all this is to be sure that we can say unequivocally everything we have in the budget is what we have to spend and why. And when it comes to the capital budget, the same things we just talked about apply. You got to sell me on why you want to bring that to the capital budget. And by the time it gets to the board, we should already have really good stories, because if they can sell me, which I'm going to be a lot more difficult in many ways than the board will be in terms of this, then it's a project that they're going to get done. But we can't have every year millions of dollars left in capital spending just because we didn't get something done.
That's a good segue to the capital funding request.
Okay.
First request is, and I'll say first only because there was one, but through the FAC meeting, another one was ferreted out, as many of you were in attendance, so I will present the first one first. It's a request for $148,263 to resurface the course at Kahidi. I think Simon was here, I'm not sure. Okay. Well, if you'd like to speak to it a little, just for a moment.
Well, let's take a motion first.
Okay.
To approve the expenditure of $148,263 to resurface the tennis and pickleball courts at Kahidi, funded from reserves.
So it's been moved and second to resurface the courts at Kahidi in the amount of $148,263. So open for discussion, and I guess we'll first have Simon come up if you want to add any color to that.
The history of it is getting vendors to come out here. When we put the covered courts in, we had Baseline do the job, and the plan was to have them resurface courts at the same time. Seeing as they were already there, we'd have to remobilize. Couldn't get them, even that week, even the next year. I can't get them until 2025. We talked to 3 or 4 other vendors that were quality vendors. We just want to get some Tom, Dick, and Harry to come out and put things together that aren't going to work right. We finally landed on a vendor because I've got a friend in Knoxville Parks and Recreation. They are doing 36 courts. Companies from Illinois. I got out and seen their work. They got a good reputation. Also did the ones in Smyrna, Tennessee. So this was the plan, was let's get these courts in. I'm not sure if you want me to talk about the other set or just this one.
Yeah, you might as well just jump
Yeah,
into the
let's do the
operation.
whole package.
So the whole package was, we need to have a bunch of courts done. And there's several ways of doing it. They talk about you can fill the cracks in and you can put acrylic over top of them, and guess what? When it gets cold, they crack again. Courts will crack. We've got over 15 years on some of these courts. And the only way to really get these done right is to put 2 inches of asphalt on top of it and repave them. So looking at the courts, and I brought this up at the FAC to go for we had a set of courts at Kahidi and a set of courts over at the Wellness Center that we needed to get done. When I put in a budget, I put in $60,000 for each because that was the going price at the time. So we had $120,000 in the budget. Guess what? It's $148,000 just to do one set of courts. And if we wait for another year, you're probably looking at the same thing. And the other thing is going to be, are we going to be able to get a quality vendor out again next year? So there's discussion during the FAC that maybe we should just go ahead and get all the courts done while this company is out here. So the next part to this was getting the two pods of courts over at the Wellness Center as well.
So that's courts 1 through 8?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So,
and how much were those?
Your total, including the Kahidi courts, is going to be $416,319.
416 what?
319.
$416,319.
Is that on your next
That
slide?
includes Kahidi.
I thought it was. The individual for the wellness center is $268,056.
So you add that to the 148,263, and that's where you come up with that number. Speaking with the pickleball club and speaking with the rec advisory committee, they had actually advised that we try to get them all done. And I went against that for my proposal because I didn't feel comfortable asking that much more. But if we have to pick one, and I think it needs to be at Kahidi.
So,
Well,
but
I think we need to dispose of the Kahidi courts, and then we'll deal with the Wellness Center courts in a separate motion.
yeah, this is a separate, but at least we have the whole story now, so we know what,
Yes,
I
what this
understand.
all is. All
I
right.
didn't know what the number was.
Sorry.
Our recollection is correct. Back the Kahidi courts, you're taking one tennis court and making it 4 pickleball courts. Is that right?
That's
That makes
correct.
the most sense. Based on the usage there, you have 8 to 12 people using the tennis courts 3 days a week. And we've already got over 70 people doing pickleball, and you have a makeshift court system that goes out there. It's not what you want to have ideally, and because you start small. We started small with the portable courts, and guess what? Usage came, and now it's time to grow it. So that you get 4 courts over there. You can have 4 courts of pickleball, professional pickleball courts, which is great for the residents, also great for marketing. And you still have a tennis court there, and now you can play tennis and pickleball at the same time as before you could.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just had a clarification question. So when you're done, you're going to have 1 tennis court and 4 pickleball courts?
Yes.
Okay.
At Kahidi.
And what would be the interval for the next round of this? How long does this last?
How long does it take to do this job?
No, how long will it last?
Oh, they're looking at 10 years.
10 years?
Okay, Simon, so you had difficulty?
Boy, it's hard on the mic.
Somebody chewed on me.
You use that one all the time, so you're the only one that could have.
No, this is not my normal number. My normal number is 7. But anyway, we are not a big operation, which Public Works has found out over the years, and it's hard for us a lot of times to get on somebody's schedule like you talked about. Somebody has a tennis complex with 30, 40 courts, they go first, right? My question is, are you getting on these people's list or sending out the bids and projecting what time of year you need next year? Because if you're not, you're going to be faced with the same
We'll
issue.
find out what happens with this go-around, because if we get this, we get all the courts done.
Right.
And the question is, are we going to get them back at next year? That's a shot in the dark.
You're
This
exactly
environment's
right.
different than I've had in 30 years. We used to play bidders against each other and go for the best one, and you can't play those games. I got
No.
one out of 4 quality bidders that's coming in.
Right.
And kind of the idea is, they're here now, they're in Knoxville, there's no
Yeah, and you're not the Lone Ranger. You talked about earlier, you talked about it. You've got to have a lot of those parts on hand, sitting there, and we've already paid for them, and none of us raised to have an inventory of that kind of dollar amount. But being a service organization, if you got holes in the courts, you put a red flag around it and you say you can't play on the courts, and maybe next year I can get them repaid. We can't stand that either.
Yes, sir. And the other part, like when we did the pickleball courts, and we had to do a fundraiser to get them, and the first dollar amount we had was $135. Just over a year later, when we put them in, it was $238,000
Okay.
for the same court.
Okay, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Any comments from the?
Oh, any other
audience?
comments, questions? Sorry. With that, I want to call for a vote. All in favor of approving this request for $148,263 to resurface the courts at Kahidi, please raise your right hand. 7-0 passed.
So the next motion would be to approve the expenditure of $268,056 to resurface the pickleball courts 1 through 8 at the Wellness Center, funded from reserves.
Been moved and second to resurface courts 1 through 8 at the Wellness Center, the pickleball courts, and that total amount would be $268,056. Any discussion? Any questions or comments?
Actually, and I think we should point this out, one of the reasons that pulling it ahead till now is we've got the guy on site. Yeah.
And he's willing to do it.
And he's willing to do it.
Yeah. So with that, well, I call for a vote. All in favor of proceeding with the wellness courts as well, pickleball courts, please signify by raising your right hand. 7-0 passed.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Got us almost back on schedule. Next item on the agenda is the library donation denial. And I basically, this came up at the last board meeting in the other session. A property owner came up and asked a question. So I felt it was appropriate that I go through the process that we went through as a board on this, and then open it up to any questions or discussion. But basically, the POA received a letter from the Loudoun County Mayor's Office requesting a $9,000 contribution for the Tellico Village Library. And then so we, as a board and our attorney, discussed this, and per our governing documents and with our attorney's advisement, the board does not have the authority to donate property owners' dollars to charitable organizations or government agencies. In prior years, because this had been going on for quite some time, and this is my 4th year on the board, and every year it's been a huge discussion as to whether we should do this or not. But stipulations were made to make it appear as though it wasn't a donation. So like a quid pro quo arrangement. But in the end, it's a donation, and this board does not have the authority to donate other people's money. So that's why the decision was made that we could not do so. So with that, that's all I really wanted to say about it. I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything.
Yeah, I'd like to refer property owners to the declaration. You go to Article 1, items 25 and 26. 25 defines common expense, which basically means all expense that the POA can spend on common property. You go to item 26, assessment. That's the amounts that the POA can collect from property owners. So that's in Article 1, definitions. You then go to Article 10, Section 2, purposes of the annual assessments. And it specifically states that your assessments must be used exclusively for expenses to repair, replace, or whatever with items on common property, period. So if anybody's confused as to what we can and can't do with your assessments, just go to Article 1, definitions, Article 10, Section 2, purposes, and that'll explain to you any better than I can explain it to you.
And yes, pardon me, yes, that's always been there. And as Marty talked about, long before I got on the board, Rick, it was long before you got on the board. Tellico Village Library, from my understanding and reading their history on their webpage, started over here, moved to one of the shopping centers, and asked for donations. And the POA board at the time, and again, there's a lot of confusion here, he has never told us that we cannot or can. He does not vote. He advises. He never tells us that you can or cannot. He advises. And all the boards I've been on, including Rick, we've had a massive debate every year. And it comes from, just like when I used to work and I had a young man that was a tractor trailer driver, his wife had cancer. Oh, shut up. And his wife had cancer. And I knew I was going to lose my job if I did this, but out of my heart of hearts, I let him come in 1 hour a day per the union contract, punch in, go outside, start up a tractor, move it, come back in, turn off the tractor, punch out, and go home. And by the union contract, he'd worked a day, and he kept his benefits. I was going to get fired, and I knew I was. And it's the same thing this board did. They came to us and they said, we can have a reciprocal agreement here. You can bypass, squirrel around, turn your other cheek, however you want to call it. And they did. And out of the goodness of their hearts, they made that donation. And time goes on, and there was a big flood. And the POA, myself and another board member, put on a 9-hole golf tournament. 100% of the golf fees, the registration fees, everything went to the library. I think it was $4,800, something like that. And then out of the goodness of our hearts, and that's a horrible word, error, whatever you want to call it, continue to contribute. And then they had an HVA system. And now it's come to the point, and it's not, they're financially, the issue now is, can this group of people sitting here with a fair conscience, a good conscience, and understanding what the rule is, continue this process? Because the potential is that anybody can come along and say, I'm going to give you a reciprocal agreement, and you can donate to anybody as long as you can squirrel around it. We're sending a message, don't do it. There is now a, what do you call this, precedent has been set in this vote that you cannot do that ever again.
And
that's it.
I got one other comment. This was not Chet's decision. This was a board decision. Chet just happened to write the letter and sign it, because as the CEO, he signs all contracts. So let's be clear. This was not Chet's decision. It was our decision, and we made it.
Thank you. That's the point I was just going to make. Okay. Any questions or comments from anybody?
Yeah, Seth Reichenbach, I live in the Grove at Chattooga Cove. My only question is, what's the procedure if those of us who think that the library is an amenity, which I read somewhere, somebody said it wasn't, and that it's important to us in the community and also improves our housing values? It was an important part of our decision to move here. What do we have to do to change what the rules so that the board can support the library financially?
Again,
is that the 2/3?
It's the 2/3 vote.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Yeah.
That's it.
But by the way, there's another issue, and that issue is that this is not on POA property.
And you know, I'll even go so far to say that if it was a POA asset, that likely we would not
the library would not get the funding that it gets today from the county.
And let me make, and that's an if, that's whatever. So it's just like the question is more and you're speculating. So anyway.
It's speculation, correct.
Sure. But let me make this perfectly clear, because we get this all the time, and I get the feedback all the time. That is an amenity. That's an amenity. People moved here. Those mountain ranges back there are an amenity. We don't pay for all the amenities. You understand? The lake is an amenity, but we don't pay for it. You know, the convenience to Knoxville, my wife's and myself like to go to the Pops concerts and the shows and all that at the Tennessee Theater. To us, that was an amenity. We would not have moved here if we were out in the middle of the boondocks and not had that experience. It's not just golf or swimming or whatever. So to counter, it is a Tellico Village amenity, absolutely, and so are the Smoky Mountains.
Forgive me for reading this, but I'm rather emotional about this, and it's better if I read it. But I'm going to first start by saying,
You get closer to it.
You got to get closer to it.
Yeah, there you go, take it off.
okay, can you hear me now? Okay. My name is Sandy Jorgensen. I'm a Tellico resident. I've been here for 10 years. I'm also involved with the library, and I know much more of the background than most of you seem to know. I don't think that you realize that in 1994, this committee, as well as the HOA, got together and said, we need a library in the community. And they worked very hard to bring this library. They had bake sales and book sales and auctions and so on and so forth, so they could bring a library to the community. The POA offered a lot on Tellico Village property, a lot that has still not been built upon because that's how inadequate the lot was for the library. So the library had to go outside of the community, adjacent to the community, and practically in the center of the community. So no, we are not on library property. Now I'd like to read, please. You say the library is not on POA property. 2 of the golf courses are not on POA property. Yet we are releasing them. We do not own that property, correct? Correct. Yes.
But
okay. Yet you have found a way to support. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I thought I had the floor.
Let's just listen. Go ahead. You have the floor. Understood.
You have found a way to support the golf courses, which are not on POA-owned property. Have you explored ways to do the same for the library? The charter states that assessment money cannot be used. Since the POA has other revenue coming in, have you considered how that money could be used for funding? You rent boat wells, you rent storage space, you have golf course revenue. There is other revenue other than assessments. Now, are you aware that although the board does not consider the library to be an amenity, it proudly refers to the library on the Tellico Village website. It advises newcomers to come to, and I quote, come to our library to get your name tags. Your discovery tours stop at the library. They bring people in. They refer to the library as one of the amenities. Maybe it's not legally an amenity, and if that's the case, how can we make it an official amenity? We believe that where there is a will, there is a way. There are 6,589 Tellico Village residents who hold library cards. That means over 6,000 people have used our library. There is a way, and they're asking for you to find a way. What we ask is that you meet the needs of the entire community as well as the special interests. Tellico Village is not a golf community. It's not a lake community. It's not a retirement community, but it's a diverse community, which is served very well by our library. Thank you.
And just to clear up a couple of facts, because this is videotaped, it is an educational, and I want to make sure that when a golfer plays golf and a boater, recreation, anybody using the POA amenities, and you sign up for family, individual, or play by day, that check, that money amount goes to TVPOA. It does not go to some other outsider accounting. It is to the TVPOA. That's where all the funds go. And the property is not on TVPOA property, or is it considered TVPOA common property? Tokwa is on common property that we lease from TRDA. Tanasi is on common property that we lease from TRDA. Kahidi, we bought, right? So there is a distinction. I want to make sure everybody's properly educated, and I agree with her. I'm not debating, I'm just stating the facts.
Okay.
First of all, I have the same problem with Loudoun County government. Y'all don't really follow Robert's rules. You're supposed to let the commenter comment and not interrupt them and not be asking questions. I have a problem with the way this whole thing was done. I consider it to be sneaky. The library wasn't told. They didn't have an opportunity to come and talk to you. They didn't get an opportunity to explain the history, which a lot of people know a lot better than you do. And I mentioned something before. I was going to go into it. When I talked to you three, when I met with you three, I mentioned the people living here on fixed incomes. And I was afraid they weren't going to be able to remain living here because of the increase in the POA fees and also what's happening with the county. They're building a new school, the assessments are going up. Tellico Village is now paying more taxes than Loudoun City or Lenoir City. And yet we get little for it. But going back to the library, there's people that can no longer golf, can no longer fish, can no longer do a lot of things that maybe we can do or they used to do. But they can read and they appreciate the library. And I would ask that you talk about it some more and figure out a way that you can continue helping the library, because for some of us, and I spoke before, I don't play pickleball, I don't golf, I don't fish, I don't boat. I don't know why I moved here. But the library and the theater were part of the reasons I moved here. And once again, quit thinking only about dollar signs and think about people. Because people matter. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to think that we think about both people and dollar signs, but everybody's entitled to their opinion, but thank you.
Seth Reichenbach again, and I've been in Tellico Village technically Tellico Village for about a year, but the house was being built since December, but have been here since last May. And my impressions of things that happen on the board here, the way things have gone, and people talk about how communication is better, but it seems like things that are important to residents are done without any prior communication. I mean, if you come out and before you say, well, we're going to quit funding the library, you would have had an education process. It seems like the board does things in either a sneaky or failure to communicate. We had the issue about firearms in the village. We had the issue with the added fees that they wanted upon purchase of a house in Tellico Village, and now the library, which is very important to a lot of people. And the appearance to me is that you're all competent people, you're doing the best that you know how, but you just spring these things on the residents without getting input. I mean, even if you had input that said, okay, 80% of us want to fund the library, and you say, well, legally we can't do it. But you educate the people, but just to pop it out there and you read in the connection that this is happening, from my way of thinking, is not a good way to do business.
Well, I will say that the board tries very hard to be as communicative as we can. I really believe that, and I believe also that communication is probably better than it's ever been. If you look at all the different ways that we're trying to communicate, and not just the board, but even Chet with the town halls, and just trying to be as open as we can. I think I think that some things are misinterpreted. I think some things you get a bunch of people that talk about it and say, yeah, I didn't know that either. Yeah, I didn't know that either. But it's out there. You just didn't know about it or didn't go look at the right place to see the communication. Not true in all cases, but certainly not all cases does this board try to hold, well, we never try to withhold information from anybody. So I'll leave it at that.
I'm gonna add one thing, Marty. It's just a solution that we could do to help temporarily, maybe this year. But we've done it in the past with lots of other entities. Same with Hopewell Fire Department. We have had golf tournaments for these type entities in the past, and they, collect their fees. But Casey's team does a great job at those fundraising tournaments, and they might get groups to make donations at these tournaments and be able to supplement the $9,000 that we're talking about.
So, yeah, and so the $9,000 is not a lot of money in the scheme of things. It's just the whole concept of donating money. That's really what the question became. It's not like, oh, we need the money. That's not it at all.
Marty, I'm sorry. I usually watch online and I don't come in person, so you'll be happy the next time I'm not here. I just wanted to make one point. It is not illegal for a nonprofit like Tellico Village to donate to another nonprofit.
It's in our governing documents.
No, it is not illegal.
No, but it's in the covenants and restrictions.
I understand that one little thing, but there's other.
It isn't a little thing, it's
Okay,
a
all
major
right.
thing.
But like Sandy said, there's other ways that you could do it. You do get fees from golf. I don't know, because I don't golf. I don't know all this stuff. But you get fees that you could designate those fees. It's less than $10,000. We're talking about the pickleball thing's going to cost almost $200,000. I mean, common sense. Where is common sense anymore in governing?
So I think like Mitzi said, yeah, there probably are other ways. And an idea could be sponsoring an annual golf tournament. So yeah, I think that between the library and the POA, we should look at things like that and see what can we do.
Just to give you an example, we just did a charity golf event at Kahiti for, what's the name of the, Hopewell Fire Department, and they raised $40,000, and that's a whole lot more than $9,000. So if the library would want that, we've already offered to allow them to do that and make that kind of money, and $9,000 would be a drop in the bucket if they wanted to do that. It's just up to them if they want to pursue that, and we're happy to facilitate that.
I'm sure the library would be happy to do that. The problem is, as Marty said, we need to talk. And when the library tried to talk to this board, nobody would talk to us. How do we get them to talk to us and be responsive, and maybe we could work something out?
Well, I'd make a suggestion, is you might want to start with the CEO, and he can bring a proposal to the board.
And I have a meeting already tomorrow afternoon.
Go there.
Well, and a golf tournament wouldn't be a board decision anyways.
Yeah, it's an
So-
operation.
Okay,
I guess a better way of putting that, and I don't mean to sound silly, but I don't really need the board's permission to do a golf tournament.
okay, with that, any other items from the board? Anybody else? Oh, I was grabbing my gavel.
Back to the survey again, Marty and Chet. This could be one of those questions. I haven't used the library since I moved here. I probably never will. I'll hop on the internet. That's just me. But should we keep the library? Yes or no? No's or no? If there's a yes, there's a little one or two elements underneath. How many times a year would you use it? Again, back to the survey thing. Think it's a good idea.
I think we found somebody to spearhead that.
But it's, yeah, what would the question be? Should we break the rules to do this? And then what's to stop the POA in the future to say, I want to donate $100,000 to the DNC? Right, same thing, you're breaking the rules for that.
Well,
Actually, we've been asked for money by our place.
Yeah, our
Well,
place has asked
as
us.
a board member, I would just like to know what the community input
What
is
it-
on this. We're not talking about any changes right now or breaking any rules. I'm just saying community input. It doesn't cost a lot of money to put an email out there.
Well, of course, the community would say 100%, yeah, let's do it. The problem is we can't legally with our governing documents.
Even if everybody said that they want us to do it, we can't.
So I think what, we've come up with a solution to, at least to try to address it. So let's go that route and then see where that gets us.
And again, this is with other issues that have been brought up today, not just the
Understood.
library.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we're adjourned.